The last thing I remembered was the sound of glass breaking. Not the delicate tinkling of a wine glass dropped on marble. No, this was the violent shattering of a windshield folding in on itself. The crunch of metal screaming against metal. The wet gasp of my own lungs collapsing under the pressure of a steering wheel that had decided to become part of my ribcage. I died on a Tuesday. At least. I think it was Tuesday. Hard to keep track when you're bleeding out on the 405 freeway. Watching your life's blood pool around you like some kind of sick halo. The paramedics would later tell my father that I died instantly. They always say that, don't they? To spare the family the image of suffering. But I didn't die instantly. I had just enough time to remember everything. Every single thing. Sebastian's face when he told me he loved me. Mia's smile when she hugged me at my engagement party. The way they looked at each other when they thought I wasn't watching. The way they looked at each other when they thought I was dead. I wasn't dead yet. Not quite. I had dragged myself from the wreckage. Stupid. So stupid. I should have stayed put. And crawled to the side of the road. The rain was coming down in sheets. The kind of rain that makes you believe in biblical floods. And I remember thinking how fitting it was. Even the sky was crying for me. And then I saw them. Sebastian's Porsche pulled up to the crash site. Mia was driving. Sebastian was in the passenger seat. His face pale. His hands shaking. But not because he was worried about me. No. He was worried about the engagement ring I was wearing. The 3-carat diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. The one he'd given me just hours before. On the same night he'd been inside my stepsister. Get the ring, Sebastian had said. I heard him through the rain. If she's dead, it's evidence. We can't leave it. Mia had looked at my broken body on the asphalt and said, just push her into the ditch. The cops will think she was drunk. I had tried to speak. Tried to tell them I could hear everything. But my throat was filled with blood. And the only sound that came out was a wet gurgle that made Mia wrinkle her nose in disgust. God, she's still alive. Mia said, just leave her. She won't last the night. They didn't push me into the ditch. They didn't take the ring. They just left me there. In the rain. Bleeding into a gutter while the love of my life drove away with my stepsister's hand on his thigh. And then I died. Or so I thought. The first thing I noticed was the light. Not the harsh fluorescent glare of a hospital room. Or the soft golden glow of heaven. If heaven even existed for someone like me. No. This was the warm, buttery light of a late summer afternoon. The kind that filters through gauze curtains and makes everything look like it's been dipped in honey. The second thing I noticed was my bedroom. My childhood bedroom. The pale pink walls my mother had chosen before she died. The white canopy bed I'd begged my father for on my 12th birthday. The corkboard above my desk. Covered with photos of me and Sebastian at homecoming. At prom. At that stupid carnival in Santa Monica where he'd won me a giant stuffed bear that I'd named after him. I sat up so fast my head spun. This wasn't possible. I'd sold this house 3 years ago. After my father remarried Vivian and moved us all into her Newport Beach mansion. I'd packed up this room with my own hands, crying into cardboard boxes while Sebastian held me and promised that one day we'd have a house of our own. A house where no one could ever hurt me again. Except Sebastian had been lying. He'd been lying about everything. I looked down at my hands. They were smooth, unscarred. No broken nails from clawing at the pavement. No ring on my finger. Just the silver promise bracelet Sebastian had given me on our first anniversary. The one with the tiny heart charm that I'd thrown into the ocean after I found out about Mia. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I grabbed it like a lifeline. My heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The screen read, September 12th, 2020. 3 years ago. 3 years before the crash. 3 years before Sebastian betrayed me. 3 years before I died. The text was from Sebastian. Can't wait to see you tonight. Baby, wear something nice. I have a surprise. Tonight. Tonight was the night of the scholarship assembly. The night Sebastian was supposed to propose. The same night he'd been with Mia in the library while I waited for him in the rose garden. My hands trembling around a glass of champagne I hadn't wanted to drink. I had a choice. I could do everything the same way I'd done it before. I could go to the assembly, accept the congratulations on my Stanford acceptance, smile for the cameras, and wait for Sebastian to get down on one knee. I could let him slip that ring onto my finger and pretend not to notice the way Mia was looking at him from across the room. I could spend the next 3 years building a life with a liar, a cheat, a man who would eventually leave me to die on a freeway because he was too afraid of losing his inheritance. Or I could burn it all down. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile that made my reflection in the mirror look dangerous. Feral. Like something that had been caged for too long and had just figured out how to pick the lock. Game on, I whispered. The scholarship assembly was held in the Thorne Academy auditorium, a massive gilded space that had been donated by Sebastian's grandfather back in the 1980s. The Thornes had their name on everything in this town. The library, the hospital, the Performing Arts Center. They were old money. The kind of old money that looked down on new money like it was a contagious disease. I had been accepted into their world because of my mother. Elena Blackwood had been a tech genius. The kind of genius that came around once in a generation. She'd founded Blackwood Industries at 22, sold it at 30 for $300 million, and died at 35 in a car accident that the police ruled unavoidable. I'd always thought that was a strange word to use. Unavoidable. Like her death had been written in stone before she was even born. My father, Harold, had remarried within 18 months. Vivian was his new wife. And she came with a daughter, Mia, 2 years younger than me, with eyes the color of sea glass and a smile that made boys forget their own names. Including, apparently, my boyfriend. I walked into the auditorium like I owned it. My heels clicked against the marble floor in a steady rhythm. Each step a small declaration of war. I was wearing a navy blue dress that Sebastian had bought me for my 17th birthday. The one that made my dark hair look even darker and my brown eyes look almost black. I'd done my makeup carefully. Sharp eyeliner. Red lips. The kind of face that said don't fuck with me before I'd even opened my mouth. The crowd parted for me like I was Moses and they were the Red Sea. Thea. Sebastian's voice cut through the noise. And I felt my stomach clench despite myself. 3 years of betrayal hadn't erased the way my body responded to him. The way my pulse quickened. The way my skin tingled. The way my heart stuttered in my chest like a car engine that wouldn't turn over. He was beautiful. God. He was so beautiful it almost hurt. Tall and broad-shouldered, with sandy brown hair that fell across his forehead in waves, and eyes the color of whiskey. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. And his smile was the same smile that had made me fall in love with him when I was 15 years old and too naive to know that love was just a word people used to get what they wanted. Sebastian. I said. Just his name. Nothing else. No warmth. No smile. Just the flat, empty acknowledgement of someone who had already buried him once and wasn't about to mourn him again. His smile faltered. You okay, baby? You look different. Different. That was one word for it. Other words included resurrected, vengeful, and absolutely done with your bullshit. I'm fine, I said, just thinking. About what? I looked past him, toward the back of the auditorium, where Mia was standing with her mother Vivian. They were both watching me, their heads tilted at identical angles, like predators sizing up prey. Vivian's hand was on Mia's shoulder, a gesture that looked maternal but was actually possessive. Vivian had never loved Mia. She'd loved what Mia could get her. And what Mia could get her was a piece of the Thorne fortune. About how interesting life is. I said, how you think you know someone, and then you find out you never knew them at all. Sebastian's brow furrowed. Thea, what are you talking about? I didn't answer. The headmaster was calling the assembly to order, and the crowd was finding their seats. I let Sebastian lead me to the front row, where the scholarship recipients and their families were seated like royalty awaiting coronation. My father was already there, sitting next to Vivian, looking uncomfortable in his borrowed suit. He'd lost most of my mother's money in bad investments, and Vivian had been bleeding him dry for years. By the time I died, he'd been living in a one-bedroom apartment in Bakersfield, too ashamed to call me for help. I sat down between Sebastian and my father, and I waited. The assembly was interminable. Speech after speech about the importance of education, the value of hard work, the bright futures that awaited us all. I'd heard it all before, in my first life, and I'd sat there with tears in my eyes, so overwhelmed by gratitude that I couldn't see the knife being sharpened behind my back. But this time, I was the one holding the knife. Finally, the headmaster called my name. Thea Blackwood, he announced, his voice echoing through the auditorium. Valedictorian of her class, winner of the National Science Fair, recipient of the Thorne Family Scholarship for Excellence. Thea, if you'd please come to the stage. The applause was polite, practiced. I stood up slowly, smoothing my dress, and walked toward the stage with the measured grace of someone who had all the time in the world. Sebastian caught my hand as I passed. I love you, he whispered. I looked down at him, really looked at him, at the face that had smiled at me while his hands were on my stepsister, at the lips that had kissed me goodbye while his tongue was still tasting her, at the eyes that had watched me bleed out on the freeway and done nothing. I know, I said, and then I pulled my hand away. The headmaster handed me a plaque and a check for $50,000. The crowd applauded. The cameras flashed, and I stood at the podium, looking out at 200 faces that had no idea what was about to hit them. Thank you, I said into the microphone. I'd like to say a few words. The headmaster blinked. That wasn't part of the program. But I was the valedictorian, and the cameras were rolling, and no one wanted to be the person who cut off the golden girl. Go ahead, Thea, he said, stepping back. I took a breath, not because I was nervous, because I wanted to savor the moment. I've been thinking a lot about trust. I began. About what it means to give someone your heart, your time, your future, and trust that they'll take care of it. About what it means to find out that trust was misplaced. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Sebastian shifted in his seat. Mia's smile tightened at the corners. I've also been thinking about secrets. I continued. The secrets we keep from the people we claim to love. The secrets that fester in the dark until they become something ugly. Something destructive. I looked directly at Sebastian. Directly at Mia. Directly at Vivian. Sebastian, I said, and his name landed like a gunshot in the silence. He stood up, confused, uncertain. Thea, what are you? I know about the library. I said, I know about the storage closet behind the gymnasium. I know about the backseat of your car on the night of the spring formal. I know about every single time you put your hands on my stepsister and told her you wished she was the one wearing your grandmother's ring. The auditorium went absolutely still. You could have heard a pin drop from 3 blocks away. Mia's face drained of color. Vivian's hand flew to her mouth. But Sebastian just stood there, his jaw working soundlessly, his eyes wide with the kind of panic that comes from being caught completely off guard. Thea, that's not. I would never. He stammered. The library. I repeated. 3 nights ago. You told me you were studying for your history final. But you weren't studying. Were you? Sebastian. You were on your knees in the philosophy section, telling Mia that you'd break up with me after the assembly. After you got the ring back. How do you know that? Mia's voice was shrill, cutting through the murmurs like a knife. She was on her feet now, her face blotchy with rage. You weren't there. No one was there. I smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had already died once and wasn't afraid of anything anymore. You'd be surprised what people see when you're not paying attention. Mia. Libraries have security cameras. Storage closets have windows. And cars have dash cams that record audio. Even when the owner doesn't know they're recording. None of that was true. I had no proof. I didn't need proof. I just needed everyone to believe I had proof. And by the looks on their faces, they did. Thea, please. Sebastian was walking toward the stage now, his hands outstretched, his expression desperate. Please, let's just talk about this. We can work this out. I love you. I stepped back from the edge of the stage, just out of his reach. You don't love me, Sebastian. You love my trust fund. You love my connections to the Thorne family. You love the way I make you look at charity galas and business dinners. But me, the actual person, you never loved me. You didn't even like me. That's not true, isn't it? I held up my phone, where I'd already typed out a text to the Thorne family lawyer. I'm transferring schools. I'm moving out of my father's house. And I'm taking my mother's money with me. Every last penny. By the time I'm done, Sebastian, the only thing you'll have left is the memory of the girl you threw away. I turned to the headmaster. I decline the scholarship. Give it to someone who deserves it. And then I walked off the stage. No one stopped me. No one tried. The crowd parted again. But this time it wasn't out of respect. It was out of fear. They'd just watched a 17-year-old girl destroy her boyfriend's reputation in front of 200 witnesses. And they had no idea what she might do next. I was halfway to the door when I heard footsteps behind me. Thea. Sebastian's voice. Desperate. Broken. Everything I'd once wanted to hear and nothing I needed now. I kept walking. Thea. Please. Just give me 5 minutes. I pushed open the doors to the parking lot. The late afternoon sun blinding me after the dimness of the auditorium. My car was waiting for me. A red convertible that my mother had bought me for my 16th birthday. The last gift she'd ever given me before she died. Sebastian grabbed my arm. I turned around so fast he stumbled backward. Take your hand off me, I said, and my voice was ice. Not the cold of winter, but the cold of deep space. The cold of a place where nothing lived and nothing grew and nothing ever came back to life. He let go like I'd burned him. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. I don't know what you think you saw. But I swear, Mia and I, if you say nothing happened, I will make sure your father's embezzlement is front-page news by morning. Sebastian went pale. What did you say? I stepped closer to him. Close enough to see the fear in his whiskey-colored eyes. I know about the accounts in the Caymans. Sebastian. I know about the shell companies and the fake invoices and the money your father's been siphoning from the family foundation for the past decade. I know everything. How? His voice was barely a whisper. Because you told me. I said. Not today. Not yesterday. But you told me. Sebastian. In another life. When I was stupid enough to think you were confiding in me instead of just using me as a convenient place to hide your guilt. He stared at me like I'd started speaking in tongues. I don't understand, he said. I know you don't. I opened my car door and slid into the driver's seat. But you will. Eventually. When you've lost everything. When you're working some dead-end job just to afford rent on a studio apartment in a neighborhood your mother told you never to drive through. When you look back on this moment and realize that this was the day you could have chosen differently. This was the day you could have been honest. Thea. Goodbye. Sebastian. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving him standing there in his expensive suit with his mouth hanging open and his world crumbling around his ears. The drive to my father's house took 20 minutes. I spent every second of it crying. Not because I was sad. Not because I was scared, but because I was finally free. I pulled into the driveway just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that looked like something out of a painting. The house was dark. Vivian and Mia were still at the assembly, probably trying to do damage control. But there was a light on in my father's study. I found him sitting at his desk, a bottle of whiskey in front of him, his head in his hands. "Dad." He looked up, and I saw the man he'd become in my first life. The broken, hollowed-out shell of a man who had let his second wife bleed him dry because he was too afraid of being alone. "Thea." His voice was slurred. He'd been drinking for hours. "I heard what happened. The whole school is talking about it." "Good," I said. "Let them talk." Sebastian called me. "He said you're transferring schools. He said you're taking your mother's money." My father's eyes were red-rimmed, desperate. "Thea, you can't do that. That money is mine," I interrupted. "It's mine. Dad, Mom left it to me, not to you. You're just the trustee until I turn 18. But Vivian can go to hell." I walked around his desk and sat on the edge of it, looking down at him. "I know about the affair. Dad, I know about the accounts she's been hiding from you. I know that she and Mia have been planning to cut you out completely once they get their hands on the Thorn money." My father's face crumpled. "How do you know that?" "Because I saw it happen," I said. "In another life. In a future that hasn't happened yet." I reached out and took his hand. The same hand that had held mine when I was a little girl learning to ride a bike. The same hand that had signed away my mother's legacy because he was too weak to say no. "I'm not going to let it happen again. I'm going to transfer to Brighton Academy. I'm going to rebuild Mom's company. And if you want to be part of my life, you need to divorce Vivian by the end of the month." He pulled his hand away. "Thea, you're 17. You don't understand the way the world works." "No," I agreed. "I don't. Because the way the world works is broken. So I'm going to fix it." I stood up and walked to the door. "Thea." My father's voice stopped me. "What happened to you? You're not the same girl who left for school this morning." I turned back to look at him. This man who had failed me in every way a father could fail a daughter. "No," I said. "I'm not. I'm the girl who came back." That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, and I made a list. Not a to-do list. A revenge list. Item 1. Transfer to Brighton Academy and rebuild my mother's company from scratch. Item 2. Make sure Sebastian's father goes to prison for embezzlement. Item 3. Destroy Mia's reputation so thoroughly that no college will accept her. Item 4. Divorce Vivian from my father and take every penny she's stolen. Item 5. Get into Harvard. Not just get in. Thrive. Become the woman my mother always knew I could be. I was halfway through Item 6 when I heard a knock on my window. I knew who it was before I even looked. Sebastian. Climbing the oak tree outside my bedroom like he'd done 100 times before. Like he had any right to be here after everything he'd done. I opened the window. "Go home." Sebastian. He was standing on the thickest branch, one hand braced against the window frame, his face streaked with tears. "I can't. Not until you hear me out. I've heard everything you have to say. In this life and the last." "What does that even mean?" His voice cracked. "You keep talking about another life. Another future. Thea, you're scaring me." "Good," I thought. "You should be scared." Sebastian. Listen to me very carefully. I leaned out the window, close enough to see the pulse hammering in his throat. "You are going to go home. You are going to delete every photo of us from your phone. You are going to forget my number, my address, and my face. And if you ever come near me again, I will destroy you. Not your family. Not your reputation. You. Do you understand?" He stared at me for a long moment. I watched the emotions flicker across his face. Confusion, fear, anger, and finally, something that looked almost like respect. "Who are you?" he whispered. I smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had already won, even though the game had barely begun. "I'm the girl you shouldn't have crossed," I said. "Now get off my tree before I call the cops." He climbed down slowly, his movements heavy with defeat. I watched him until he disappeared into the darkness. And then I closed the window and locked it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming." I didn't recognize the number, but I recognized the threat. I deleted the message and went back to my list. Item 6. Find out who sent that text. Item 7. Make them regret it. I had 3 years until the night I was supposed to die. 3 years to rewrite history. 3 years to become the woman I was always meant to be. And I wasn't going to waste a single second. The week after the assembly was chaos. My phone rang off the hook. Reporters. College recruiters. Sebastian's mother. Sebastian's lawyer. Sebastian's grandmother, who I'd actually liked and who had cried at my funeral in the original timeline. I ignored all of them. I changed my number twice. I deleted my social media accounts. I became a ghost. And ghosts don't answer phone calls. The only person I talked to was Professor Elena Vance. I'd met Elena in my first life. 3 years from now. When I was a broken shell of a woman trying to piece together what was left of my mother's company. She'd been my mentor. My friend. The only person who believed in me when everyone else had written me off as the girl who'd been destroyed by Sebastian Thorne. But in this life, I found her early. She was teaching a seminar at Brighton Academy, a private school in Pasadena that cost more per year than most people made in a decade. I'd applied for transfer the morning after the assembly, and I'd been accepted within 48 hours. Money talked. My mother's money screamed. Elena met me in her office on my first day. She was 52 years old, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. She was wearing a black pantsuit that probably cost more than my father's car, and she was holding a tablet that contained every public record of my life. "Thea Blackwood," she said, not looking up from the screen. "Daughter of Elena Blackwood, heiress to a $300 million fortune, valedictorian of your class, National Science Fair winner, and as of last week, the most talked about teenager in California." "That's me," I said, sitting down across from her desk. Elena looked up. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, the kind of eyes that measured a person's worth in seconds and rarely found it wanting. "Why Brighton?" she asked. "Why now?" I met her gaze without flinching. Because Thorne Academy is full of people who want to use me. And because I need a mentor who understands what it's like to build something from nothing. Elena's eyebrow arched. "And you think I'm that mentor?" "I know you are." I reached into my bag and pulled out a flash drive. On this drive is a business plan for a company I'm calling Phoenix. It's an AI startup that will revolutionize the way people interact with technology. By the time I'm 20, it'll be worth $500 million. By the time I'm 25, it'll be worth $3 billion. And I want you to help me build it. Elena took the flash drive, turning it over in her fingers like she was examining a piece of evidence. "You're 17 years old," she said. "You have no business experience, no college degree, no track record. Why should I invest my time in you?" "Because my mother built a $300 million company before she was 30, I said. "And because I'm smarter than she was. Smarter than you are, too, if we're being honest." Elena stared at me for a long moment. And then, slowly, she smiled. "I like you, Blackwood," she said. "You've got guts. I've got more than guts." I said, "I've got a second chance." The first month at Brighton was easier than I expected. The students were wealthier than the ones at Thorne Academy. But they were also more honest about it. No one pretended to care about social justice while wearing $5,000 shoes. No one smiled to your face while stabbing you in the back. The competition was open, brutal, and refreshing. I made exactly one friend, Chloe Martinez, a girl from East LA who'd gotten into Brighton on a full scholarship and had the chip on her shoulder to prove it. She was short, fierce, and funny in a way that made people forget she was the poorest person in the room. I liked her immediately. "So you're the girl who eviscerated Sebastian Thorne in front of the entire school," Chloe said on our second day, sliding into the seat next to me in calculus. "I heard you made him cry." "He didn't cry," I said, not looking up from my textbook. "He just looked like he was going to." Same thing, in my experience. Chloe pulled out her phone and showed me a news article with my face on it. "You're famous. You know, #Team Thea is trending on Twitter." I glanced at the article. It was from some gossip website, full of speculation about Sebastian and Mia and the mysterious proof I'd mentioned at the assembly. The comments were split between people calling me a hero and people calling me a liar. "I don't care about trending," I said. "I care about calculus." Chloe laughed. "You're weird." Blackwood. "I like it." We became inseparable after that. She was the Watson to my Holmes, the Robin to my Batman, the peanut butter to my jelly. She didn't ask questions about the dark circles under my eyes or the way I flinched whenever someone mentioned Sebastian's name. She just showed up, sat beside me, and made me laugh when I wanted to cry. But at night, when I was alone in my new apartment, I'd moved out of my father's house the week after the assembly, using my mother's money to rent a place near Brighton. I worked. I coded until my fingers cramped. I studied until my eyes blurred. I built Phoenix from the ground up, line by line, function by function, using knowledge I'd gained in my first life and refined in this one. The idea was simple: an AI assistant that actually understood human emotion. Not the fake understanding of Siri or Alexa, but real empathy, real connection. An AI that could tell when you were sad and offer comfort, when you were angry and offer perspective, when you were happy and offer celebration. In my first life, I dreamed of building Phoenix, but I'd been too busy playing the role of Sebastian's girlfriend, too distracted by his lies and his cheating and his endless demands for attention. By the time I finally started working on it, I was already dying, and the code was stolen by Mia and sold to a competitor. Not this time. This time, I was building Phoenix in secret, on a laptop that wasn't connected to any network, using encryption that would take the NSA years to crack. By the time Sebastian's father went to prison, by the time Vivian was exposed, by the time Mia realized what she'd lost, Phoenix would already be worth millions, and I would already be untouchable. 3 months after the assembly, I got a letter from Harvard. Early acceptance. I stared at the envelope for a full minute before opening it, my hands trembling in a way they hadn't trembled since the night of the crash. In my first life, I'd been rejected from Harvard. I'd cried for 3 days. And Sebastian had held me and told me it didn't matter, that we would go to Stanford together, that everything would be fine. But in this life, I'd worked harder, smarter. I'd rewritten my application essays 5 times, incorporating everything I'd learned from watching Elena review other students' applications. I'd retaken the SATs twice, scoring a 1590 on my second attempt. I'd built a portfolio of coding projects that would make most computer science professors weep with envy. And now, the letter was in my hands. I opened it. Dear Thea Blackwood, it is with great pleasure that I inform you of your early admission to Harvard University. I didn't read the rest. I didn't need to. I'd gotten in. I'd actually gotten in. I sat down on my bed and cried. Not because I was sad. Not because I was scared. But because my mother would have been so proud. The same week, Sebastian's father was arrested. I watched the news coverage from my apartment, a glass of wine in my hand and a smile on my face. The FBI had raided Thorne Industries at dawn. seizing computers, servers, and boxes of documents. The charges were embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. The estimated amount, $47 million. Sebastian's mother stood outside the courthouse, her face a mask of practiced grief, and told reporters that her husband was innocent, that this was all a misunderstanding, that the family would fight these charges to the ends of the earth. But I knew the truth, because I'd been the one who tipped off the FBI. It had taken me 3 months to gather the evidence. 3 months of hacking into servers I had no business accessing, of following digital trails that led to shell companies in the Caymans, of connecting dots that no one else had bothered to connect. In my first life, the FBI had caught Sebastian's father eventually, but not until after the crash, not until after I was dead. This time, I wasn't waiting. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You did this." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. We both knew it was true. Another buzz. "You don't know what you've started." I deleted the message and poured myself another glass of wine. 3 weeks after the arrest, Sebastian showed up at my apartment. I don't know how he found me. I'd been careful. No social media. No public listings. No paper trail. But Sebastian had resources I didn't know about. Connections I'd never understood. He was standing outside my door at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Thea." His voice was rough. Desperate. "Please. Just let me explain." I leaned against the doorframe, blocking his entrance. "There's nothing to explain. Sebastian, your father stole money. He got caught. End of story. You know it's not that simple." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I remembered from our relationship. A gesture that meant he was trying to stay calm and failing. Someone tipped off the FBI. Someone with access to our servers. Someone who knew about accounts that only family members were supposed to know about. "And you think that someone was me? I know it was you." He stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell his cologne. The same brand he'd worn since we were 16. "Thea, I don't know how you found out about those accounts. I don't know how you knew about Mia and me. But I know you're behind this. And I need you to stop. Stop." I laughed. It was an ugly sound. Bitter and sharp. "Your family stole $47 million from a foundation that was supposed to help underprivileged kids go to college. Your father is a criminal. Your mother is an accomplice. And you." I poked him in the chest. Hard. "You're the son of a thief who cheated on his girlfriend with her own stepsister. You don't get to ask me to stop. You don't get to ask me for anything." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "I loved you. You loved what I could give you." I stepped back, preparing to close the door. "There's a difference. Thea." "Wait." He grabbed the door, holding it open. "Please. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm just asking you to tell me why. Why are you doing this? What did I ever do to you that was so bad?" I looked at him, really looked at him. And for a moment, I saw the boy I'd fallen in love with. The boy who'd held me when my mother died. The boy who'd stayed up all night with me when I was studying for finals. The boy who'd promised me forever and meant it. At least in the moment he said it. But then I remembered the rain. The crash. The ring. The way he'd looked at my broken body on the asphalt and told Mia to push me into the ditch. "You left me to die," I said. "In another life. You left me to die on the side of the road because you were too afraid of losing your inheritance. And I swore to myself that if I ever got a second chance, I would make sure you felt every ounce of pain you put me through." Sebastian stared at me, his face pale, his eyes wide. "I don't know what you're talking about," he whispered. "I know." I closed the door in his face. "But you will." The next morning, I flew to Boston for my Harvard interview. Elena came with me, partly as a mentor and partly as a chaperone. She'd been impressed by my business plan. impressed enough to invest her own money in Phoenix, impressed enough to believe that I could actually pull this off. "You're nervous," Elena said as the plane took off. "I can tell. Your leg is bouncing." "I'm not nervous," I said. "I'm excited." "You're lying." Elena handed me a folder. "Read this. It's the profile of the professor who'll be interviewing you. Dr. Marcus Webb. He's a genius. He's also a complete asshole. He'll try to intimidate you. Don't let him." I skimmed the folder. Marcus Webb, 43 years old. PhD in computer science from MIT. Published over 100 papers on artificial intelligence. Known for his temper and his tendency to reduce students to tears during oral exams. "Sounds charming," I said. "He's not," Elena said. "But he's the best in his field. If you impress him, you're in. If you don't..." She shrugged. "There's always Stanford." "I'm not going to Stanford," I said. "I'm going to Harvard." Elena smiled. "That's the attitude." The interview was held in Dr. Webb's office. A cramped space filled with books and papers and the detritus of a man who spent more time thinking than cleaning. Dr. Webb himself was tall and thin, with wire-rimmed glasses and a receding hairline. He looked at me like I was a bug he'd found in a soup. "Thea Blackwood," he said, not bothering to stand up. "I've read your application. Impressive numbers. But numbers don't tell me anything about your mind." "Then ask me a question that will," I said, sitting down without waiting for an invitation. Dr. Webb's eyebrow arched. He picked up a pen and tapped it against his desk. A slow, rhythmic tap that was clearly meant to unnerve me. "Fine," he said. "Explain to me how you would design an AI that can distinguish between sarcasm and sincerity in written communication." I didn't hesitate. "You wouldn't. Not with current technology. Language is too contextual, too dependent on shared experience and cultural knowledge. Instead, you design an AI that asks clarifying questions." "Are you being sarcastic? Should I interpret that literally?" "The goal isn't to eliminate ambiguity. It's to manage it." Dr. Webb stopped tapping his pen. "That's an interesting answer. Most applicants try to solve the problem. Most applicants are wrong," I said. "The problem can't be solved. It can only be addressed." For a long moment, Dr. Webb just stared at me. I stared back. I'd faced worse than a grumpy professor. I'd faced death. I'd faced betrayal. I'd faced the cold, hard truth that the people you love can destroy you without a second thought. Dr. Webb sat back in his chair. "You're either the smartest applicant I've ever interviewed, or the most arrogant. Can't I be both?" He laughed. It was a rusty, unused sound, like a door opening after years of being closed. "Thea Blackwood," he said. "I look forward to failing you in my class." "Good," I said, standing up. "I look forward to proving you wrong." I got the acceptance letter 3 days later. Dr. Webb had written a personal note at the bottom. "You'll do." I framed it and hung it on my wall, right next to a photo of my mother. The rest of my senior year passed in a blur of classes and coding and careful, meticulous planning. I watched from a distance as Sebastian's life fell apart. His father was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His mother sold the mansion and moved to a condo in Arizona. Sebastian himself transferred to a public school, one of those places where the teachers carried pepper spray and the students carried grudges. Mia didn't fare much better. The rumors about her affair with Sebastian had spread like wildfire. And by the time college applications rolled around, every school she applied to had rejected her. She ended up at a community college in Oregon, studying something useless like hospitality management. Vivian tried to fight back. She hired a lawyer, threatened to sue me for defamation, tried to turn my father against me. But my father, to my surprise, finally grew a spine. He divorced Vivian, moved into a small apartment in San Diego, and started going to therapy. He called me once a week, and I let him leave voicemails. I wasn't ready to forgive him, but I was ready to listen. And I built Phoenix. By the time graduation rolled around, I had a working prototype, a provisional patent, and a meeting with a venture capital firm that was willing to invest $20 million in exchange for 15% of the company. I turned them down. $20 million is too low. I told Elena over coffee. Phoenix is worth at least 50. Elena shook her head. You're 17 years old. Thea, no one is going to give you $50 million. Then I'll wait. I said, I'll build it myself. I'll fund it myself. I don't need their money. I have my mother's. Your mother's money won't last forever. It doesn't need to. I leaned forward, my eyes bright with certainty. By the time it runs out, Phoenix will be generating revenue. By the time I graduate from Harvard, Phoenix will be profitable. By the time I'm 25, Phoenix will be the most valuable AI company in the world. Elena stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed. You're insane, she said. Absolutely insane. I know, I said. Isn't it wonderful? On graduation day, I stood on the Brighton Academy stage and accepted my diploma with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Chloe stood beside me, her cap slightly askew, her grin so wide it looked like it hurt. We did it, she whispered as we walked off the stage. We actually did it. We haven't done anything yet. I said, this is just the beginning. Chloe rolled her eyes. You're so dramatic. Blackwood, you love it. I do, she admitted. I really do. After the ceremony, I found a quiet corner and pulled out my phone. There was a text from Elena. Harvard bound. See you in the fall. A text from my father. I'm proud of you. Thea, I know I don't deserve to say that, but I'm proud of you anyway. And a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I deleted the last message without responding. I didn't have time for threats. I had a future to build. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. I won't bore you with the details of every class, every all-nighter, every moment of doubt and fear and exhaustion that filled the space between Brighton Academy and Harvard Yard. The important things are these. Phoenix launched 6 months into my freshman year. The app went viral within weeks, hitting 1 million downloads in the first month, 10 million in the first year. By the end of my sophomore year, Phoenix was worth $300 million. And I was on the cover of Forbes magazine under the headline, The Teenager Who's Changing the World. I was 19 years old. I was a junior at Harvard. I was worth $50 million on paper. And I had absolutely no intention of slowing down. Chloe had followed me to Harvard, not as a student, but as my right hand. She dropped out of community college after 6 months, moved to Boston, and become the unofficial COO of Phoenix. She handled the business side of things while I handled the tech. And together, we were unstoppable. Elena had joined the Harvard faculty as a visiting professor, partly to keep an eye on me and partly because she missed the classroom. She taught a seminar on entrepreneurship that was always full, always oversubscribed, and always ended with her telling someone they were wasting their potential. And Dr. Marcus Webb, the asshole professor who'd threatened to fail me in his class. He'd become my thesis advisor. We argued constantly, butted heads on every project, and somehow, miraculously, produced research that was cited by scientists around the world. Life was good. Until the night I walked into the Hawthorne. The Hawthorne was a bar in Cambridge, the kind of place that served craft cocktails to grad students and charged $20 for a whiskey that cost $12 at the liquor store. I didn't usually go to bars. I didn't have time for bars. But Chloe had insisted. And Chloe had a way of insisting that made it very difficult to say no. 1 drink, she said, dragging me through the door. One drink. And then we go back to the dorm, and you can code all night. I promise. You said that last time. I reminded her. And I meant it last time. But then Marcus showed up and started talking about neural networks. And you got that look in your eyes. And I knew I'd lost you. That look is called intellectual curiosity. That look is called obsession. And you need to chill. The Hawthorne was crowded for a Wednesday night, packed with students and professors and the occasional townie who'd wandered in by mistake. The lighting was low, the music was loud, and the air smelled like beer and desperation. I ordered a gin and tonic and found a table in the corner, positioning myself so I could see the door. Old habit. In my first life, I'd learned to watch for threats. In this life, I'd never stopped. Chloe went to the bar to get her own drink, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I scrolled through my phone, checking emails, checking stock prices, checking the latest user reviews of Phoenix. Everything was good. Everything was under control. And then the door opened, and I looked up, and my heart stopped. Sebastian Thorne was standing at the entrance of the Hawthorne, wearing a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, carrying a tray of drinks to a table in the back. He was a bartender. Sebastian Thorne, heir to the Thorne fortune, grandson of the man who donated a library to Thorne Academy, was working as a bartender in a dive bar in Cambridge. I should have left. I should have walked out the door and never looked back. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I could only watch as he set down the tray, wiped his hands on a towel, and scanned the room with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned to read people as a survival skill. His eyes met mine, and the world stopped. He recognized me instantly. I saw it in the way his body went still, the way his hands clenched at his sides, the way his jaw tightened like he was trying to swallow a scream. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The bar continued to buzz around us, oblivious to the collision of two timelines that had already happened once and shouldn't have happened again. Then Sebastian walked toward me. Not ran. Not stumbled. Walked. With the same deliberate grace I remembered from our relationship. The same confidence that had made me fall in love with him in the first place. "Thea," he said, stopping in front of my table. "It's been a while." I looked up at him, forcing my face into an expression of polite disinterest. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" The words hit him like a physical blow. I saw the pain flicker across his face, the brief flash of hurt before he masked it with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thea, please," he said, his voice low. "Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I don't know who you think I am." I said, "But I'm not interested in whatever you're selling." Sebastian's smile faltered. "You're not going to pretend you don't know me. Not after everything." Everything. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. "I'm sorry. Have we met before?" I have a terrible memory for faces. Chloe chose that moment to return. 2 drinks in her hands and a curious expression on her face. "Thea, who's your friend?" she asked, setting the drinks on the table. "No one," I said. "He was just leaving." Sebastian looked at Chloe, then back at me, and something shifted in his eyes. Determination, maybe, or desperation. It was hard to tell the difference. "My name is Sebastian Thorne," he said, extending a hand to Chloe. "I used to know Thea. A long time ago." Chloe's eyes widened. She knew the story. Everyone knew the story. Thea Blackwood, the tech prodigy who'd been betrayed by her billionaire boyfriend and his stepsister. It was practically a movie script. "Sebastian Thorne," Chloe repeated, shaking his hand slowly. "The Sebastian Thorne. The one and only." He turned back to me, his expression earnest. "Thea, I know I don't have any right to ask for your time. I know I hurt you. But I've been looking for you for 2 years. 2 years. Thea. And now that I've found you, I'm not going to just walk away. You're not going to walk away." I stood up, My gin and tonic forgotten. Let me make something very clear. Sebastian, I don't care how long you've been looking for me. I don't care what you think you have to say. I made a choice 3 years ago to cut you out of my life. And I stand by that choice. You made a choice. Sebastian's voice rose, drawing the attention of nearby tables. You made a choice to destroy my family. My father is in prison. My mother lost everything. I'm working as a bartender. Thea, a bartender. Because you decided that I didn't deserve to have a future. I stepped closer to him, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his whiskey-colored eyes. You didn't deserve to have a future, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Not the future you wanted. Not the future you stole from me. Sebastian's breath caught. What does that mean? It means, I said, that you should be grateful you're still breathing. Because in another life, you're not. I grabbed Chloe's arm and pulled her toward the door. Thea, wait. Sebastian called after me. I didn't wait. I walked out of the Hawthorne and into the cold Cambridge night, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Chloe caught up with me outside, her breath fogging in the cold air. What the hell was that? She demanded. Thea, you just told the guy you destroyed that he should be grateful he's still breathing. That's not normal. That's not healthy. That's… I know what it is. I interrupted. I know it's not normal. I know it's not healthy. But you don't understand. Chloe, you don't know what he did to me. Then tell me. Chloe grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. Tell me what he did that was so bad that you've spent the last 3 years turning yourself into a weapon aimed at his heart. I looked at my best friend. This girl who had followed me from California to Massachusetts. Who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Who had never asked for anything except my friendship. And I told her. I told her about the crash. About the rain. About the way Sebastian had looked at my broken body and told Mia to push me into the ditch. I told her about the baby I'd been carrying in my first life. The baby I'd lost when the steering wheel crushed my abdomen. I told her about dying on the side of the road while the love of my life drove away with my stepsister's hand on his thigh. By the time I finished, I was crying. Chloe was crying, too. Thea, she whispered, pulling me into a hug. Thea, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know any of that. No one knows. I said, my voice muffled against her shoulder. I've never told anyone. I couldn't. They'd think I was crazy. Maybe you're crazy, Chloe said. But you're also my best friend. And if Sebastian Thorne did those things to you, in another life or this one, then he deserves everything you've done to him and more. I pulled back, wiping my eyes. You believe me. Chloe hesitated. I believe that you believe it. And that's enough for me. It wasn't enough. Not really. But it was more than anyone else had ever given me. I didn't see Sebastian again for 3 weeks. I avoided the Hawthorne like the plague. I changed my routes to class, my coffee shops, my study spots. I became a ghost again, drifting through Harvard Yard with my head down and my shoulders hunched, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But Sebastian was patient. He'd always been patient. It was one of the things I'd loved about him. Back when love was still a word I could say without tasting blood. He found me in Widener Library, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, in the stacks where I'd hidden myself away to work on my thesis. Thea. I looked up from my laptop. He was standing at the end of the aisle, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, looking nothing like the billionaire's son I'd known and everything like the broken man I'd created. How did you find me? I asked. You always liked the 3rd floor, he said. The study carols by the window. You said the light was better. I closed my laptop. You remember that. I remember everything. Thea. He walked toward me, slowly, like he was approaching a wild animal. I remember your favorite ice cream flavor. I remember the way you hummed when you were coding. I remember the sound of your laugh. I remember every single moment we spent together. Because those moments were the best of my life. Then why did you throw them away? The question came out harsher than I intended. Sharper. More honest. Why did you throw me away? Sebastian stopped a few feet away. His hands shoved in his pockets. His shoulders hunched against the weight of my words. I don't know, he said. I've asked myself that question every day for the past 3 years. And I still don't have an answer. I was young. I was stupid. I was scared of what my family would think if I didn't marry someone with connections. But those are excuses. Thea, not reasons. No, I agreed. They're not. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. Sebastian's voice cracked. I know I don't deserve it. I know I'll never deserve it. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for hurting you. I'm sorry for lying to you. I'm sorry for every single moment I made you feel like you weren't enough. Because you were always enough. You were more than enough. And I was too blind to see it. I stared at him. This boy who had destroyed me and been destroyed in return. And I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not love. But something else. Something that felt almost like recognition. I've been watching you. Sebastian continued, his voice low, from a distance. I've read every article about Phoenix. I've watched your interviews. I've seen what you've built. And I've seen who you've become. And I need you to know that I'm proud of you. Thea, even if you never speak to me again, even if you hate me until the day you die, I'm proud of the woman you've become. I didn't know what to say to that. So I said nothing. Sebastian nodded, like he'd expected my silence, and turned to leave. Sebastian. I called out, before I could stop myself. He turned back. Why are you really here? I asked. Not the apology. Not the guilt. What do you actually want? Sebastian looked at me for a long moment. And then he said something I didn't expect. I want to work for you. I blinked. What? Phoenix. I want to work for Phoenix. He walked back toward me, his expression earnest. I've been studying computer science at community college. I'm not as good as you. No one is. But I'm good enough to be useful. And I want to help. I want to build something that matters. I want to be part of something that isn't just about money or status or power. You want to work for the company owned by the woman whose family you destroyed. I shook my head. That's either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. Sebastian said. But I meant what I said. Thea, I've spent 3 years trying to figure out who I am without my family's money. And the person I've found is someone who wants to do good. Someone who wants to make up for the damage I caused. I can't undo what I did to you. But I can try to be better. And this is me trying. I studied his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. But all I saw was exhaustion, and hope, and fear. I'll think about it, I said finally. Sebastian's face lit up with a smile so bright it almost hurt to look at. Thank you, he said. Thank you. Thea, don't thank me yet, I said. I haven't said yes. I know. He walked backward toward the aisle, still smiling. But you didn't say no, either. And that's more than I deserve. He disappeared around the corner, leaving me alone in the stacks with my laptop and my thoughts and the ghost of a boy I'd once loved. I didn't hire him. Not right away. I made him wait. I made him apply through the official channels, submit his resume, complete the coding challenge, sit through 3 rounds of interviews with people who had no idea who he was. He passed every test with flying colors. I wasn't surprised. Sebastian had always been smart. He'd just been lazy, complacent, content to coast on his family's name and money. Without those crutches, he'd had to actually work for the first time in his life. And the results were impressive. Chloe was against the hire. You can't be serious, she said when I told her. He's your ex. The ex. The one who? I know what he did. I interrupted. I was there. I remember. Then why are you even considering this? It's insane. It's like inviting a fox into the henhouse and being surprised when the chickens start disappearing. Because I want to see what he does. I said, I want to see if he's really changed. And if he hasn't. I shrugged. Then I'll destroy him. Again. Chloe shook her head. You're playing with fire. Thea. I know. I said. But fire is the only thing that's ever made me feel alive. I hired Sebastian as a junior developer, the lowest rank in the company. He'd be working out of the Boston office, reporting to a manager who reported to a manager who reported to Chloe. He wouldn't have any direct access to me, any ability to influence company strategy, any power to do anything except write code and fix bugs. It was the safest way to test him. And test him I did. For the first 6 months, Sebastian was a model employee. He showed up early, stayed late, volunteered for the worst assignments, and never complained. He was polite to everyone, competent in his work, and completely invisible to the press. I watched him from a distance, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It didn't. Instead, Sebastian started to rise through the ranks. His code was clean, efficient, innovative. He solved problems that had stumped senior developers. He mentored junior programmers who were struggling. He became indispensable without ever drawing attention to himself. By the end of his first year, he'd been promoted twice. By the end of his second year, he was leading his own team. By the end of his third year, he was the head of the Boston office. And I couldn't avoid him anymore. The day he was promoted to head of Boston, Sebastian showed up at my office in Cambridge. I wanted to thank you in person, he said, standing in my doorway with his hands behind his back, for taking a chance on me, for giving me a second chance. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. He looked different than he had 3 years ago. More settled, more confident, less desperate. I didn't give you a second chance. I said, I gave you a job. You earned the rest. Still, he stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. I know you didn't have to hire me. I know you had every reason not to. And I want you to know that I've tried to be worthy of your trust. Have you? I have. He sat down across from me, his expression serious. Thea, I know you don't believe me. I know you think I'm still the same person who hurt you. But I've changed. I've really changed. And I want to prove it to you. How? Let me show you. He pulled a flash drive out of his pocket and set it on my desk. This is a proposal for a new AI initiative. It's something I've been working on for the past year, in my spare time. It's not finished yet, but I think it could be revolutionary. And I think you're the only person who can help me finish it. I looked at the flash drive, then at Sebastian. Why should I trust you? I asked. Because I have nothing left to lose. He said, my family is gone. My reputation is destroyed. The only thing I have is this job. And I'd rather lose it trying to do something meaningful than keep it by playing it safe. I picked up the flash drive, turning it over in my fingers. I'll look at it. I said, no promises. Sebastian nodded. That's all I'm asking. He left my office. And I sat there for a long time, staring at the flash drive in my hand. I didn't trust him. I would never trust him. But I was curious. And curiosity, I'd learned, was a dangerous thing. The AI initiative Sebastian proposed was brilliant. I hated admitting that. I hated everything about the way his code sang, the way his logic flowed, the way his vision aligned so perfectly with mine that it felt like we were sharing a brain. But I couldn't deny the truth. Sebastian had become the developer I'd always known he could be. And his proposal, which he'd titled Project Chimera, was the most innovative thing Phoenix had seen since the original launch. Chimera was designed to be an AI that could learn and adapt in real time, without the need for human intervention. It was ambitious, risky, and potentially world-changing. If it worked, it would make Phoenix the undisputed leader in artificial intelligence. If it failed, it could set the company back years. I called Sebastian into my office the next morning. "Your proposal is good," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "Not great, but good." Sebastian sat down across from me, his expression carefully neutral. "What would make it great?" "You would." I looked up. "If Chimera is going to work, I need to be involved. Not as a supervisor, as a partner. We build this together. Or we don't build it at all." Sebastian's eyes widened. "You want to work with me?" "Directly. I want to work on the project." I corrected. "You happen to be the one who proposed it. That doesn't make us partners. That makes you the architect and me the builder." "Same thing," Sebastian said, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "It's really not. But I agreed to the project. And for the next 6 months, I spent more time with Sebastian than I'd spent with anyone since Chloe. We worked in the Phoenix lab, a secure facility in the basement of the headquarters building. No windows, no distractions. Just row after row of computers and servers and the quiet hum of electricity. I brought my coffee. He brought his focus. Together, we built something beautiful. It was the most dangerous thing I'd ever done. The first crack appeared 3 months into the project. We were debugging a section of code that had been giving us trouble for days. Something about the way Chimera processed emotional cues. I was exhausted. Sebastian was frustrated. And in the quiet of the lab, with no one else around, he asked me a question I'd been dreading. "Thea," he said, not looking up from his screen, "what happened to the baby?" My fingers froze over the keyboard. "What?" "In your other life. The one you told me about." He finally looked at me, his expression gentle. "You said you were pregnant. What happened to the baby?" I stared at him, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. "How do you know about that?" I whispered. "You told me. That night at my apartment. When you said I left you to die on the side of the road. You mentioned a baby." He set down his keyboard and turned to face me fully. "I've thought about it every day since. I've wondered if—" "There's nothing to wonder about," I interrupted, my voice sharp. "The baby died. I died. End of story. But in this life, there is no baby in this life." I stood up so fast my chair tipped over. I made sure of it. I've been careful. I've been alone. I've built a life that doesn't include anyone I can't afford to lose. Sebastian stood up too, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Thea, I'm not trying to. I don't care what you're trying to do." I was shaking now, my whole body trembling with a rage I'd been suppressing for years. "You don't get to ask about that. You don't get to think about that. You lost that right when you chose Mia over me." "I know," Sebastian said, his voice soft. "I know I lost that right. But I'm asking anyway, because I need to understand. I need to understand the full weight of what I did. The full weight." I laughed. A bitter, broken sound. "You want to understand the full weight? Fine. I'll tell you." I walked toward him, my footsteps echoing in the silence of the lab. "I was 3 months pregnant when I found out about you and Mia. I was going to tell you that night. At the engagement party. I had the ultrasound picture in my pocket. I reached into my memory, pulling out details I'd tried so hard to bury. I was going to show you. And you were going to be happy. And we were going to be a family. That was the fantasy. That was the dream." Sebastian's face had gone pale. "Thea." "But instead, I found you with her. In the library. The same library where you'd told me you loved me for the first time." I stopped inches from him, close enough to see the tears welling in his eyes. I ran out of there so fast I didn't even grab my purse. I got in my car and I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. The crash. Sebastian whispered. The crash. I confirmed. I lost control on the freeway. The rain was coming down so hard I couldn't see the road. My car spun out, hit the median, flipped 3 times. And when I crawled out of the wreckage, bleeding and broken and still carrying your child, you looked at me and told Mia to push me into the ditch. Sebastian's face crumpled. He reached for me, but I stepped back. I bled out on the side of the road. I said, my voice flat. I died holding the ultrasound picture of a baby who never got to be born. And you drove away with my stepsister's hand on your thigh. I didn't know. Sebastian choked out. I didn't know about the baby. I swear to God. Thea. I didn't know. Does it matter? I asked. Would it have changed anything? Sebastian opened his mouth, then closed it. His face was wet with tears, his whole body shaking. I don't know, he admitted. I want to say yes. I want to believe that I would have done something different. But I don't know. And that's the worst part. I don't know if I was a monster then, or if I just became one. I looked at him, this man who had destroyed me in another life, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. You're not a monster, Sebastian. I said, you're just a man who made terrible choices. But so did I. I chose to love you. I chose to trust you. And those choices almost killed me. Then why are you giving me another chance? Sebastian asked, his voice raw. Why did you hire me? Why are you working with me? Why haven't you destroyed me completely? I thought about the question. Thought about all the reasons I should have walked away. All the reasons I should have burned him to the ground. And then I answered honestly. Because I'm tired of being defined by what you did to me. I said, I'm tired of being the victim. I'm tired of being the girl who was betrayed by Sebastian Thorne. I want to be Thea Blackwood, the woman who built Phoenix. Not Thea Blackwood, the woman who survived you. Sebastian nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. I understand, he said, but I hope you know that surviving me was the bravest thing you've ever done. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because if I opened my mouth, I would say something I'd regret. Something like, surviving you wasn't brave. It was necessary. And it's still not over. After that night, something shifted between us. We still worked together. We still built Chimera. But the walls I'd erected between us had developed cracks. And through those cracks, something was seeping in. Friendship. Maybe. Or something like it. Sebastian started bringing me coffee in the mornings. The way he used to when we were dating. He started remembering my deadlines. My meetings. My preferences. He started showing up in ways that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with care. I told myself it didn't mean anything. I told myself he was just being polite. Just trying to make up for the past. Just doing what any decent person would do. But I wasn't fooling anyone. Least of all myself. The night of the Phoenix holiday party, I almost kissed him. We were on the rooftop of the headquarters building, looking out at the Boston skyline. The party was happening below us, the music and laughter filtering up through the open windows. But up here, it was just us and the stars. You're different than I remember, Sebastian said, his breath fogging in the cold air. I should hope so, I said. I was 17 when you last knew me. I'm 21 now. That's 4 years of growth. Not just growth. He turned to look at me, his eyes reflecting the city lights. You're harder. Colder. You used to laugh so easily. Thea, you used to light up a room just by walking into it. Now you just exist. Like you're waiting for something bad to happen. Maybe I am. I said, maybe you should stop. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Maybe you should let yourself be happy. Happy. I laughed. But there was no humor in it. I don't even know what that word means anymore. Then let me show you. Sebastian reached out and touched my face. His fingers featherlight against my cheek. I should have pulled away. I should have slapped his hand, walked off the roof, never looked back. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, as he leaned in and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was soft, gentle, nothing like the desperate, hungry kisses I remembered from our relationship. This was a question, not a demand. An offering, not a taking. And for one perfect moment, I let myself fall. Then I remembered the rain, the crash, the ring, the way he'd looked at my broken body on the asphalt. I pushed him away. That's what you wanted, right? I said, my voice shaking. That's what you've been working toward this whole time. To get me back in your bed. Sebastian's face crumpled. No, Thea, that's not. I don't care what it is. I stepped back, putting distance between us. This doesn't change anything. You don't get to kiss me and pretend the past didn't happen. You don't get to touch me and expect me to forget. I'm not asking you to forget, Sebastian said, his voice desperate. I'm just asking you to feel. To let yourself feel something other than anger and pain. I feel plenty. I said. I feel hatred. I feel disgust. I feel the ghost of a baby who never got to be born because his father was too busy sleeping with my stepsister to care about my safety. Sebastian flinched like I'd struck him. That's not fair, he whispered. Neither was dying on the side of the road. I turned and walked toward the door. Get back to work, Sebastian. We have a company to run. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the kiss over and over in my mind. The softness of his lips, the warmth of his hand, the way my body had responded to him. Even after everything, I hated him. I hated him for what he'd done, for what he'd taken from me, for the way he made me feel like I was betraying myself just by wanting him. But I also hated myself, because I did want him. I wanted him so badly it physically hurt. And that wanting scared me more than anything else. The next morning, I walked into the lab and found Sebastian already at his workstation. His eyes red-rimmed and his expression guarded. About last night, he started. There's nothing to talk about. I interrupted, sitting down at my own workstation. It was a mistake. It won't happen again. Thea, I said it won't happen again. I pulled up the code for Chimera, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Now, are we going to work? Or are we going to waste time discussing something that doesn't matter? Sebastian stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned back to his own screen. It matters, he said quietly. But I won't push. We worked in silence for the rest of the day. And the day after that. And the day after that. But the cracks in my armor were getting wider. And sooner or later, something was going to break through. The first sign that my carefully constructed world was crumbling came in the form of my father. Harold Blackwood showed up at the Phoenix headquarters on a rainy Thursday afternoon, looking older and more broken than I remembered. His hair had gone completely gray. His face was lined with worry, and his clothes hung off his frame like they belonged to someone else. Thea, he said, standing in the lobby with his hat in his hands. I need to talk to you. I didn't invite him upstairs. I didn't offer him coffee. I just stood there, looking at him, waiting. It's Vivian, he said when the silence became unbearable. She's been calling me, threatening to sue me for alimony, threatening to go to the press with stories about you, threatening to. Dad. I held up a hand, cutting him off. I don't care what Vivian is threatening. She has no power. She has no money. She has no leverage. She's a desperate woman grasping at straws. And you're letting her get inside your head. She knows things. Thea, things about your mother's death. Things that could. What things? My voice was sharp, cutting through his rambling like a knife. What does Vivian know about my mother's death? My father's face went pale. He looked around the lobby, like he was checking for eavesdroppers, and then lowered his voice. Your mother's car accident, he said. The one that killed her. Vivian was there. I felt the floor shift beneath my feet. What do you mean? She was there. She was at the scene. My father said. She told me. Years ago, when we were first married, she said she saw the whole thing happen. She said she tried to help. But it was too late. He swallowed hard. I didn't believe her at first. I thought she was just trying to bond with me, to make me feel like she understood my pain. But now I'm not so sure. I grabbed my father's arm and pulled him into the elevator. We're going to my office, I said, and you're going to tell me everything. The story my father told me that afternoon made my blood run cold. According to him, Vivian had been at the scene of my mother's accident because she'd been following her. Vivian had been obsessed with my mother for years, jealous of her success, her wealth, her happy marriage. She'd wanted what my mother had, and she'd been willing to do anything to get it, including, possibly, causing the accident. I don't have proof, my father said, his voice shaking. I never had proof, but Vivian hinted at it. Over the years, little comments, little jokes. She'd say things like, if Elena had just stayed off the road that day, she'd still be alive. Or, it's funny how things work out, isn't it? One person's tragedy is another person's opportunity. Why didn't you tell me this before? I demanded. Why didn't you go to the police? Because I was afraid, my father admitted. Afraid of what Vivian might do. Afraid of what I might find out. Afraid of losing the only family I had left. You didn't have Vivian, I said, my voice cold. You had me. You always had me. But you chose her instead. My father's face crumpled. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Thea, sorry wasn't enough. Sorry would never be enough. But it was a start. After my father left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking. My mother's death had been ruled an accident. The police had investigated, concluded that the brake lines had failed due to normal wear and tear, and closed the case. But if Vivian had been involved, if she'd sabotaged the car, or paid someone else to do it, then the case wasn't closed. It was just waiting to be reopened. I needed proof. And the only person who might have it was Vivian herself. I picked up my phone and called Chloe. I need you to do something for me, I said. Something that might be illegal. Chloe didn't hesitate. What do you need? 2 weeks later, I had the proof I needed. Vivian had kept a journal. A detailed, obsessive journal that documented every moment of her obsession with my mother, including the night of the accident. In it, she'd written about hiring a mechanic to cut the brake lines on my mother's car, about following her that night, watching her lose control, watching her die. It was all there, in Vivian's own handwriting. Chloe had found the journal in a safety deposit box that Vivian had forgotten to close after the divorce. It had taken some creative hacking and a few favors from people who owed me. But we'd gotten it. And now, Vivian was going to pay. I didn't go to the police. I went to the FBI. The agent who took my call was a woman named Diana Reyes, a sharp-eyed Latina who'd made a career out of putting away white-collar criminals. She listened to my story, examined the journal, and asked me one question. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked. Your stepmother is a dangerous woman. If she finds out you're the one who turned her in, she might try to hurt you. She's tried to hurt me before. I said. She's tried to kill me. At least this way. She'll be in prison where she can't try again. Agent Reyes nodded. I'll take the case. Vivian was arrested 3 days later, at a charity event in Los Angeles. I watched the news coverage from my office, a glass of champagne in my hand and a smile on my face. The reporters were calling it the socialite scandal of the decade. Vivian Harper, the woman who'd married into the Blackwood fortune, accused of murdering her predecessor in cold blood, The cameras caught Vivian's face as the FBI agents led her out of the event in handcuffs. She was screaming, her face blotchy with rage, her eyes wild. "This isn't over," she shrieked. "You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming for you." Thea. No idea who Sebastian really is. I felt a chill run down my spine. Sebastian. What did Vivian know about Sebastian? I found Sebastian in the lab, working on Chimera like nothing had happened. "You saw the news," I said, closing the door behind me. He looked up, his expression guarded. "I saw it. Vivian mentioned you. Before they took her away. She said I didn't know who you really are." Sebastian set down his keyboard and turned to face me. "And what do you think she meant by that?" "I don't know," I said. "That's why I'm asking you." Sebastian was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked toward me, his footsteps heavy on the concrete floor. "Thea, there's something I haven't told you," he said. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." My heart started to pound. "What is it?" "My mother," Sebastian said. "She's not in Arizona." "She never was." "Then where is she?" Sebastian looked me in the eyes, and what I saw there made my blood run cold. "She's been in Boston this whole time," he said. "And she's been watching you. Just like I have." Sebastian's mother, Catherine Thorne, was supposed to be a ghost. After her husband's arrest, she'd sold everything, moved to Arizona, and disappeared from public life. That was the story. Anyway, the story she'd wanted everyone to believe. The truth was far more complicated. She faked her death, Sebastian said, his voice low. "Not literally. But she might as well have. She changed her name, her appearance, her entire identity. She's been living in Boston for the past 3 years, building a new company, a competitor to Phoenix." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What company?" "Nexus Corp." Sebastian pulled up a website on his phone and handed it to me. "They specialize in AI, just like Phoenix. But they're more aggressive, more willing to cut corners, more willing to do whatever it takes to win." I scrolled through the website, my mind racing. Nexus Corp. I'd heard of them. Of course. They were Phoenix's biggest competitor, the company that had been stealing our market share for the past 2 years. But I'd never made the connection to Catherine Thorne. I'd never even considered it. "How long have you known?" I asked. "Since the beginning." Sebastian's voice was strained. "My mother contacted me a few months after I started working at Phoenix. She wanted me to spy on you, to feed her information about the company." "And did you?" Sebastian hesitated. And in that hesitation, I had my answer. "Yes," I said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Sebastian confirmed. "At first. For the first year. I gave her financial reports, product roadmaps, employee data, everything I could get my hands on. I felt sick. Everything. Not everything." Sebastian stepped closer, his expression desperate. I stopped. "Thea, after a year, I stopped. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't betray you again. But you did betray me," I said, my voice shaking. "For a year. You lied to me. For a year. You pretended to be loyal while you were feeding information to my enemy." "I know." Sebastian's voice cracked. "I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this." I grabbed my phone and started dialing Chloe. "Sorry doesn't undo the damage you've caused." "Thea." "Wait." Sebastian grabbed my arm, his grip firm. "Before you call anyone, you need to know the rest." "What rest?" Sebastian took a deep breath, like he was steeling himself for something terrible. "My mother isn't just building a competitor to Phoenix," he said. "She's building a weapon. An AI that can manipulate public opinion, influence elections, destroy anyone who gets in her way. And she's almost finished." I stared at him, my heart pounding. How do you know this? Because I helped her build it. Sebastian's eyes were wet with tears. Before I stopped, before I realized what I was doing, I helped her build something that could destroy everything you've worked for. And now, I have to help you stop it. I pulled my arm out of his grip and stepped back. Why should I trust you? I asked. Why should I believe anything you say? Because I love you, Sebastian said. Because I've always loved you. And because I would rather die than let my mother hurt you again. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just looked at him. Show me. I said. Show me everything. Sebastian led me to his apartment, a small one-bedroom in a part of Boston I'd never visited. The walls were bare, the furniture sparse, the whole place feeling more like a hotel room than a home. He opened a laptop and typed in a password, his fingers shaking. The Nexus AI is called Ares, he said, pulling up a series of files. It's designed to be a weapon. It can generate fake news articles, deepfake videos, social media posts that look like they're from real people. It can start riots, topple governments, start wars, all from a single command. I read through the files, my horror growing with every line. This is illegal, I said. This is beyond illegal. This is treason. I know. Sebastian's voice was hollow. And I helped build it. Can it be stopped? Sebastian nodded. There's a kill switch. A piece of code that will shut down the entire system. But it's protected by a firewall that only my mother can access. Then we need to get access. She won't give it to me. Sebastian shook his head. Not after I stopped working for her. She knows I've turned against her. She's probably already planning to destroy me. Then we need to find another way. Sebastian looked at me, his expression unreadable. There is another way, he said, but you're not going to like it. Try me. Sebastian took a deep breath. We need to go to the Nexus headquarters, he said. We need to break into the server room and access the firewall directly. And we need to do it before my mother launches Ares. When is she planning to launch? 2 weeks, Sebastian said. At the Nexus shareholder meeting. She's going to unveil Ares to the world. And then she's going to use it to destroy Phoenix. I felt the weight of the world settle onto my shoulders. Then we have 2 weeks to stop her. I said, let's get to work. The next 2 weeks were a blur of planning and preparation. Sebastian and I worked around the clock, mapping out the Nexus headquarters, identifying security weaknesses, rehearsing every possible scenario. Chloe helped where she could, using her connections to get us equipment and information. Elena provided legal cover, making sure none of our activities could be traced back to Phoenix. And through it all, Sebastian and I grew closer. It was impossible not to. We were spending 16 hours a day together, sharing meals, sharing fears, sharing the kind of intimacy that comes from facing a common enemy. The walls I'd built between us crumbled a little more each day, until there was almost nothing left. One night, a week before the launch, Sebastian found me crying in the lab. Thea. He sat down beside me, his voice gentle. What's wrong? I don't know if I can do this. I admitted. I don't know if I can face your mother. I don't know if I can stop her. You don't have to do it alone, Sebastian said. I'll be right beside you. That's what scares me. I said. That's what's always scared me. You beside me. You betraying me. You leaving me to die. Sebastian reached out and took my hand. I'm not going to leave you, he said. Not this time. I promise. Your promises don't mean anything, I said. But I didn't pull my hand away. Then let me prove it. Sebastian squeezed my fingers. Let me show you that I've changed. Let me earn your trust. I looked at him, at this man who had destroyed me and been destroyed in return. And I made a choice. Okay, I said. Show me. The night before the Nexus shareholder meeting, I went to Sebastian's apartment. We didn't talk about the mission. We didn't talk about the future. We just sat together on his couch, watching the rain fall against the window, and let ourselves be. Thea, Sebastian said, breaking the silence. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know something. What? He turned to look at me. His eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't name. I love you, he said. I've never stopped loving you. And I'm sorry it took me so long to figure out how to love you the right way. I stared at him, my heart pounding. Sebastian, you don't have to say it back, he interrupted. I don't expect you to. I just needed you to know. I leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't like the kiss on the rooftop. It wasn't a question or an offering. It was a statement, a declaration, a promise. When I pulled back, Sebastian was staring at me like I'd hung the moon. Thea, he whispered, don't make me regret this. I said, I won't. He said, I swear to God, I won't. The Nexus shareholder meeting was held at a hotel in downtown Boston. A grand ballroom filled with investors and journalists and the kind of people who measured success in zeros. Sebastian and I arrived separately, wearing disguises and false identities. He was a caterer. I was a journalist. We moved through the crowd like ghosts, invisible and unnoticed. The presentation was scheduled for noon. We had until then to access the server room and activate the kill switch. Sebastian led me through a service entrance, down a hallway, into the bowels of the hotel. The server room was in the basement, protected by a biometric lock and a keypad code. I can get us past the lock, Sebastian said, pulling out a device he'd built specifically for this purpose. But the code is going to be a problem. My mother changes it every day. Then we'll have to guess. I said, guess. Thea, there are 10,000 possible combinations. Then we'd better start guessing. Sebastian shook his head, but he didn't argue. He pressed the device against the biometric lock. And after a moment, the light turned green. The doors swung open. Inside the server room, row after row of computers hummed with electricity. The air was cold, almost freezing, and the only light came from the blinking LEDs on the machines. The firewall is on that terminal, Sebastian said, pointing to a computer in the corner. I'll start working on the code. You keep watch? I nodded and positioned myself by the door, my heart pounding in my chest. Sebastian sat down at the terminal and began typing, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The seconds ticked by like hours. Anything? I asked. Not yet, Sebastian said. The encryption is stronger than I thought. I need more time. We don't have more time. I checked my watch. The presentation starts in 20 minutes. Then I'll have to work faster. I watched the door, listening for any sound of approaching footsteps. The silence was deafening. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Coming toward the server room. Someone's coming. I whispered. Sebastian's typing slowed. How many? 1. Maybe 2. Can you delay them? I can try. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. I pressed myself against the wall, ready to fight if I had to. The door swung open, and Catherine Thorne walked in. She looked different than I remembered. Older. Harder. Her face sharpened by years of bitterness and rage. But her eyes were the same. Cold. Calculating. And utterly without mercy. Thea Blackwood, she said, her voice smooth as silk. I've been expecting you. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just watched her as she walked into the room. Sebastian. Catherine continued, looking past me at her son. I'm disappointed in you. I thought we had an understanding. We did, Sebastian said, not looking up from his keyboard. Then I realized you were a monster. A monster. Catherine laughed. I'm a survivor. Sebastian. There's a difference. You're a murderer. I said. You tried to kill me. You try to destroy everything I've built. I didn't try to destroy you, Catherine said, turning to face me. I succeeded. You just don't know it yet. Before I could respond, she pulled a gun from her jacket and pointed it at my chest. Step away from the terminal, Sebastian, she said, or I'll shoot her. Sebastian's fingers froze on the keyboard. Mom, he said, his voice strained. Don't do this. Don't do what? Protect my legacy. Protect everything I've worked for. Catherine's hand was steady, her aim true. I've spent 3 years building Nexus. 3 years sacrificing everything. My marriage, my reputation, my relationship with my son, to make this company succeed. I'm not going to let you destroy it. Your company is a weapon, I said. A weapon that could kill thousands of people. Maybe millions. People die every day. Thea. At least this way. Their deaths will mean something. You're insane. I'm pragmatic. Catherine smiled. Now step away from the terminal. Sebastian. I won't ask again. Sebastian looked at me, his eyes filled with fear and desperation. Do it, I said. Step away. Thea. Step away. I have a plan. Sebastian hesitated, then slowly stood up and moved away from the terminal. Catherine walked toward the computer, her gun still pointed at me. Smart boy, she said. Now, let's see what you've been working on. She sat down at the terminal and began typing, her fingers moving with the same speed and precision as Sebastian's. I watched her, waiting for my moment. And then it came. Chloe had installed a remote trigger on the Nexus servers, a device that would shut down the entire system if activated. The trigger was on my phone, hidden in my pocket. All I had to do was press a button. But if I pressed it now, Catherine would know. She'd shoot me before the system shut down. I needed a distraction. I looked at Sebastian. He was watching me, his expression tense, his body coiled like a spring. Do something, I mouthed. Sebastian nodded. He lunged forward, grabbing his mother's arm and twisting it behind her back. The gun went off, the bullet embedding itself in the ceiling. Catherine screamed, struggling against her son's grip. Press it. Thea, Sebastian shouted. Press it now. I pulled out my phone and pressed the button. The servers went dark. The lights flickered. The hum of electricity died. And somewhere in the ballroom above us, the presentation that Catherine had spent years preparing came to an abrupt and ignominious end. No, Catherine screamed, her face contorted with rage. No, you don't know what you've done. You've destroyed everything. No, I said, walking toward her. I've saved everything. Sebastian released his mother's arm, and she collapsed to the floor, sobbing. I looked down at her, this woman who had tried to destroy me, and felt nothing. Sebastian, I said, call the police. The police arrived within minutes. Catherine was arrested, charged with attempted murder, corporate espionage, and a dozen other crimes I'd lost count of. She screamed and raved as they led her away, cursing my name, cursing Sebastian's name, cursing everyone who'd ever crossed her. I watched her go, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. Finally, it was over. Sebastian found me in the hotel lobby, sitting on a bench, staring at nothing. Thea, he said, sitting down beside me. Are you okay? I don't know. I admitted. I think I am. But I'm not sure. You saved a lot of lives today. I saved my company. I looked at him. The lives were a bonus. Sebastian smiled. A tired, worn-out smile that didn't reach his eyes. What happens now? He asked. I don't know. I said. I guess we go back to normal. Whatever normal is. And us. I looked at him. At this man who had betrayed me and saved me. Who had destroyed me and rebuilt me. Who had broken my heart and then put it back together? I don't know, I said. I need time. Sebastian nodded. I understand. He stood up and walked away, leaving me alone on the bench. And I sat there, in the lobby of a hotel in Boston. And I thought about the future. For the first time in 4 years. I didn't know what it held. And for the first time in 4 years. I was okay with that. The aftermath of Catherine's arrest was chaos. The media descended on Boston like vultures, hungry for every detail of the Nexus scandal. My face was everywhere. On magazine covers. On news broadcasts. On social media feeds. I was hailed as a hero, a genius, a woman who had single-handedly stopped a technological catastrophe. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt tired. Sebastian had been cleared of any wrongdoing, thanks to a deal he'd made with the FBI. He'd testified against his mother, provided evidence of her crimes, and agreed to cooperate with the investigation. In exchange, he'd been granted immunity. He was free, but he was also broken. I didn't see him for a week after the arrest. He'd gone into hiding, staying with a friend in Vermont, avoiding the press and the public and the weight of everything that had happened. I didn't blame him. I wanted to hide, too, but I couldn't. Phoenix needed me. Chloe needed me. My father needed me. And somewhere, deep inside, I needed to keep moving. Because if I stopped, I would fall apart. The first time I saw Sebastian after the arrest was at the Phoenix headquarters. A week later, he looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, hollow cheeks, a gauntness that spoke of sleepless nights and endless guilt. Thea, he said, standing in my doorway. We need to talk. I gestured for him to sit down. Chloe told me you've been in Vermont. I said. I needed to think. About what? About everything. Sebastian sat down across from me, his hands clasped in his lap. About my mother. About Nexus. About us. I waited. Thea, I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. Sebastian looked me in the eyes, his expression earnest. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. For the lies. For the betrayal. For the way I hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be better. I know you are. I said. I've seen it. Then why do you still look at me like I'm a stranger? I didn't have an answer to that. Because I didn't know. I looked at Sebastian. And I saw the boy I'd loved. The man he'd become. And the stranger he'd always been. 3 versions of the same person. All tangled together in my mind. I don't know how to trust you. I admitted. I want to. But I don't know how. Then let me show you. Sebastian leaned forward, his voice urgent. Let me prove to you that I've changed. Give me a chance to earn your trust. How? Let me work with you. Not as an employee. As a partner. As someone who believes in what you're building and wants to help you build it. I thought about it. Thought about all the reasons I should say no. All the reasons I should walk away. But I was tired of walking away. Okay, I said. But on my terms. Whatever you want. I want you to be honest with me. About everything. No more secrets. No more lies. Done. I want you to go to therapy. To deal with your guilt and your trauma and your mother issues. Sebastian winced. But he nodded. Done. And I want you to give me space. I held up a hand before he could protest. Not because I don't want you around, but because I need to figure out who I am without you. I've spent 4 years defining myself by my revenge. It's time to define myself by something else. Sebastian was quiet for a long moment. I understand, he said finally. But Thea. Yes. I'll be here. When you're ready, I'll be here. The next few months were a period of adjustment. Sebastian kept his word. He went to therapy, worked on his issues, and gave me the space I'd asked for. We saw each other at work. exchanged polite greetings, and kept our distance. Chloe thought I was being too harsh. He's trying. Thea, she said one night, over drinks at a bar near Harvard. He's really trying. Don't you think you should give him a chance? I am giving him a chance. I said, I'm giving him the chance to prove that he can be patient, that he can respect my boundaries, that he can be a decent human being without expecting a reward. And when he proves it, then we'll see. Chloe shook her head. You're impossible. I know. But the truth was, I was scared. I was scared of letting Sebastian in. Scared of what would happen if I trusted him again. Scared of losing myself in him, the way I had before. I'd spent 4 years building walls around my heart, and I wasn't sure I knew how to take them down. 6 months after the Nexus arrest, Sebastian asked me to dinner. Not as a date, just as friends. 2 people who had been through hell together, sharing a meal and a conversation. I said yes. We went to a small Italian restaurant in the North End. The kind of place where the waiters called you honey and the wine came in carafes. It was simple, unpretentious, and perfect. You look nice, Sebastian said, holding out my chair. So do you, I said, sitting down. We ordered. We ate. We talked about work, about life, about everything except the elephant in the room. Finally, over tiramisu, Sebastian brought it up. Thea, he said, setting down his fork. I need to ask you something. Go ahead. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? I looked at him, at the hope and fear in his eyes, and I thought about the question. I don't know, I said honestly. I want to, but I don't know if I can. What would it take? I thought about it. Thought about all the pain he'd caused me, all the trust he'd broken, all the ways he'd let me down. I need to know that you're not going to hurt me again. I said, I need to know that you've changed. Really changed. Not just for me, but for yourself. How can I prove that? By being patient. I said, by giving me time, by showing me, every day, that you're the man you say you are. Sebastian nodded slowly. I can do that, he said. I can wait. I know you can. I said, that's why I'm still here. 6 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. I was sitting in my office, reviewing financial reports, when a wave of nausea hit me so hard I had to run to the bathroom. I threw up until my stomach was empty, then sat on the cold tile floor, my heart pounding. No, I thought. It can't be. But it was. I'd been careful. I'd been so careful. But the night before the Nexus shareholder meeting, the night I'd gone to Sebastian's apartment, we'd been careless. Just once. Just one time. And now, I was pregnant. I didn't tell anyone at first. I couldn't. I needed time to process, to think, to figure out what I was going to do. I went to a clinic outside Boston, used a fake name, and confirmed what I already knew. I was 8 weeks pregnant. The baby was healthy. The baby, Sebastian's baby. I sat in my car for an hour after the appointment, staring at the ultrasound picture, trying to feel something. Joy, fear, anger, anything. But all I felt was numb. I told Sebastian a week later. We were in the lab, working on a new project, when the nausea hit again. I ran to the bathroom, threw up, and came back to find Sebastian waiting for me, his face pale. Thea, he said, what's going on? Nothing, I said. Just a stomach bug. You've had that stomach bug for 2 weeks. He stepped closer, his expression concerned. Thea, please, tell me the truth. I looked at him, at the man who had destroyed me and saved me, who had broken my heart and put it back together. I'm pregnant, I said. Sebastian went completely still. What? I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. The baby is yours. Sebastian stared at me, his mouth hanging open, his eyes wide with shock. Thea, he whispered. Thea, don't. I held up a hand. Don't say anything. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I don't know if I'm going to keep it. Thea, I said don't. My voice cracked. I need time. I need to think. And I can't do that with you hovering over me. Sebastian nodded slowly, his face pale. Okay, he said. Okay, whatever you need. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I went back and forth about the pregnancy 100 times. One day I was sure I was going to keep the baby. The next day I was sure I was going to terminate. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus on anything except the impossible choice in front of me. Chloe was my rock. She held my hand when I cried, listened when I ranted, and never once judged me for my indecision. Whatever you decide, she said, I'll support you. You know that, right? I know, I said. That's what scares me. In the end, I decided to keep the baby. It wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't a logical decision. It was a decision based on something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I told Sebastian on a Tuesday, in his apartment, with the rain falling against the windows. I'm going to keep the baby, I said. Sebastian's face lit up with a joy I hadn't seen in years. Thea, he said, pulling me into a hug. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, I said, pulling back. This doesn't change anything between us. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. I know, Sebastian said, but I'm still grateful. The pregnancy was difficult from the start. I was sick constantly, unable to keep down food or water. My doctor put me on bed rest, warning me that I was at risk for preterm labor. I ignored her. Of course, working from my laptop even when I was supposed to be resting. Sebastian was furious. You're going to kill yourself, he said one night, finding me hunched over my computer at 2 a.m. I'm fine, I said. You're not fine. You're pale. You're exhausted. And you've lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks. Thea, please, just rest. I can't rest. Phoenix needs me. Phoenix can survive without you for a few weeks. No, it can't. I looked up at him, my eyes burning with exhaustion and frustration. If I stop working, everything falls apart. Everything I've built. Everything I've sacrificed. I can't let that happen. Thea, just leave me alone. Sebastian. He didn't leave. He sat down beside me and took my hand. You're not alone, he said. You don't have to do this by yourself. I've been doing it by myself for 4 years. I know. And I'm sorry. He squeezed my fingers. But you don't have to anymore. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I looked at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and I felt something shift inside me. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I went into labor at 7 months. It was too early, too soon. The baby wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. But my body didn't care about readiness. It was done waiting. Sebastian drove me to the hospital, running red lights and breaking speed limits, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. I was in so much pain I could barely see, barely breathe, barely think. Hang on, Thea, Sebastian said, his voice cracking. Just hang on. The hospital was a blur of white lights and green scrubs and voices I couldn't understand. They put me in a room, hooked me up to monitors, and told me I was going to have to deliver the baby now, whether I was ready or not. Is the baby going to be okay? I asked, my voice weak. We're going to do everything we can, the doctor said. But she's early, very early. We need to prepare you for the possibility that she might not survive. I was having a daughter. Sebastian was by my side the whole time, holding my hand, wiping my forehead, telling me everything was going to be okay even though we both knew it might not be. "I love you," he said, as the contractions intensified. "I love you so much. Thea, I love you. And I love our daughter. And everything is going to be okay. I promise." "Don't make promises you can't keep," I gasped. "I'm not going to break this one," he said. "I swear to God, I'm not." Aurora Blackwood Thorne was born at 3:47 a.m. on a cold November morning. She weighed 4 pounds, 2 ounces. She was tiny, fragile, and absolutely perfect. And she was alive. The doctors whisked her away to the NICU, where she would spend the next 2 months growing strong enough to go home. I didn't get to hold her. I didn't even get to see her face. But I heard her cry, and that was enough. "She's beautiful," Sebastian said, his voice thick with tears. "She looks just like you. You haven't even seen her face." I said, "I don't need to. I can feel her." He pressed his hand against my stomach, where the baby had been just hours ago. "She's ours. Thea, she's really ours." I looked at him, at the tears streaming down his face, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Love. Not the desperate, needy love of my teenage years. Not the bitter, resentful love of my early 20s. But a new kind of love. A grown-up kind of love. The kind that came from surviving something terrible together and choosing to stay. "Sebastian," I said, "I think I'm ready." "Ready for what?" "To forgive you." The next 2 months were a blur of NICU visits and sleepless nights and moments of pure, unadulterated terror. Aurora was fragile. Too fragile. Every day was a battle against infection, against breathing problems, against the 1,000 tiny ways a premature baby could die. But she was a fighter, just like her mother. Every day, Sebastian and I sat by her incubator, talking to her, singing to her, willing her to live. And every day, she got a little stronger, a little healthier, a little closer to coming home. By the time she was discharged, she weighed 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Still tiny, still fragile, but alive. And so was I. The day Aurora came home, Sebastian asked me a question. "Thea," he said, holding our daughter in his arms, "will you marry me?" I stared at him, my heart pounding. "Sebastian, I know it's too soon," he interrupted. "I know we're not ready. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. With Aurora. With the family we've built." I looked at our daughter, at her tiny fingers wrapped around Sebastian's thumb, and I thought about the future. "I can't marry you," I said. Sebastian's face fell. "Not yet." I continued. "Maybe someday, but not yet. I need time." "We both do." Sebastian nodded slowly. "I understand," he said. "I'll wait." "I know you will." I said, "That's why I love you." 1 year later, I walked across the stage at Harvard graduation. Aurora was on my hip, wearing a tiny cap and gown that Chloe had ordered from a specialty store. Sebastian was in the audience, sitting between Chloe and Elena, his face glowing with pride. As I accepted my diploma, I looked out at the crowd and thought about everything that had brought me here. The crash, the betrayal, the revenge, the forgiveness. It had been a long road, a hard road, but I had survived. And not just survived, thrived. I walked off the stage and into Sebastian's arms. Aurora squished between us. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly happy. "I love you," Sebastian said, kissing my forehead. "I love you too," I said. And I meant it. Epilogue 5 years later. Phoenix was the most valuable AI company in the world. Aurora was 6 years old, smart as a whip, and absolutely convinced that she was the boss of everyone. She had Sebastian's eyes and my stubbornness. And she was the best thing that had ever happened to us. Sebastian and I still weren't married. We'd talked about it, even planned it a few times. But something always got in the way. Work, Aurora, life. But we were happy. Happier than I'd ever thought possible. And that was enough. One night, after Aurora had gone to bed, Sebastian and I sat on the balcony of our apartment, looking out at the Boston skyline. "Thea," he said, taking my hand, "I have a question." "What is it?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Will you marry me?" he asked, opening the box to reveal a simple diamond ring. For real this time. I looked at the ring, looked at Sebastian, thought about everything we'd been through, everything we'd survived, everything we'd built together. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Sebastian's face broke into a smile so bright it lit up the night. "Finally," he said, sliding the ring onto my finger. "I was starting to think you'd never say yes. I was starting to think you'd never ask." I said. We kissed, and the city sparkled below us. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't thinking about the past. I was thinking about the future. The wedding invitations went out on a Tuesday. 300 of them. Cream-colored cardstock with gold foil lettering. Hand-addressed by Chloe because she said my handwriting looked like a doctor having a seizure. Each one contained a simple message. "Thea Blackwood and Sebastian Thorne request the pleasure of your company at their wedding." I should have been happy. I was happy. Mostly. The nightmares had stopped. The flashbacks had faded. Aurora was thriving. A 4-year-old whirlwind of curls and chaos who had her father's smile and my inability to sit still. Phoenix was worth $3 billion. And I was stepping back from day-to-day operations to focus on my family. For the first time since I'd woken up in my 17-year-old body, I felt like I could breathe. But the past has a way of finding you, even when you've buried it 6 feet deep. The package arrived on a Thursday. It was sitting on my doorstep when I came back from dropping Aurora at preschool. A plain brown box with no return address. No postmark. Nothing to indicate where it had come from or who had sent it. I carried it inside, my heart already pounding. Old instinct. The kind of instinct that came from being betrayed too many times. "Thea." Sebastian came out of the kitchen, a cup of coffee in his hand. "What's that?" "I don't know." I set the box on the dining table. No return address. Sebastian's expression shifted, his eyes narrowing. "Don't open it. I'll call the police." "Don't be dramatic." I pulled out a knife and sliced through the packing tape. "It's probably just a gift from one of your mother's old friends." Trying to. I stopped. Inside the box was a single item. A USB drive. Encased in a clear plastic case. No note. No explanation. Just the drive. Sitting on a bed of black foam like a tiny coffin. Sebastian reached for it. "Let me." "No." I grabbed the drive first. If someone wanted to hurt me, they wouldn't send a USB drive. They'd send a bomb. This is information. And I need to know what it is. I walked to my home office, Sebastian following close behind, and plugged the drive into my laptop. The contents were a single folder. Elena Blackwood, case file. My mother's name. My hands started to shake. "Thea." Sebastian's voice was low. "Careful. Maybe you should let me look first." "No." I clicked on the folder. Inside were dozens of files. Photos. Documents. Scanned letters. I opened the first photo, and my blood ran cold. It was my father, Harold Blackwood, standing in a parking lot, handing an envelope to a man I didn't recognize. The timestamp on the photo read, October 12th, 2017. 2 weeks before my mother's accident. "That's your father?" Sebastian asked. I nodded, unable to speak. I opened another photo. My father again. This time with Vivian. Sitting in a restaurant booth. their heads close together. They were smiling, laughing, like they didn't have a care in the world. More photos, more documents, more evidence of meetings, phone calls, financial transactions between my father and Vivian, all dated before my mother's death. And then I opened the file that changed everything. It was a letter, handwritten, on my father's personal stationery, dated October 15th, 2017. Addressed to Vivian. Vivian, I've done what you asked. The mechanic has been paid. He'll take care of the car on Friday, when Elena is out of town. By Monday, it will be done. I hope you're happy. I hope this was worth it. I'll be at the usual place on Tuesday. Bring the rest of the money. Harold I read the letter 3 times. 4 times. 5 times. Each time, the words became clearer. Each time, the meaning became more impossible to deny. My father had known. He had known about the brake lines. He had known about the plan to kill my mother. And he had done nothing to stop it. Thea. Sebastian's voice seemed to come from very far away. Thea. Say something. I looked up at him. His face was pale. His eyes wide with shock and concern. He knew. I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. He knew. Sebastian. My father knew Vivian was going to kill my mother. And he let it happen. Sebastian knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in his. We don't know that for sure. He said. The letter could be fake. The photos could be doctored. Someone could be trying to. Look at it. I pulled my hands away and pointed at the screen. Look at the handwriting. Look at the stationery. That's my father's. I'd recognize it anywhere. Sebastian looked. His jaw tightened. We need to verify this. He said. We need to have the documents analyzed by a forensic expert. We can't just. I don't need an expert. I stood up so fast my chair tipped over. I need to talk to my father. Thea. Wait. Sebastian grabbed my arm. If he was involved. If he knew. Confronting him alone is dangerous. Let me come with you. No. I pulled away. This is my family. My mess. I need to handle it myself. Thea. Please. Sebastian. I looked at him. And I saw the fear in his eyes. The same fear I felt crawling up my throat. Just let me do this. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Call me as soon as you're done. He said. Promise me. I promise. My father lived in San Diego now, in a small condo overlooking the ocean. He'd remarried. A nice woman named Margaret who didn't know anything about his past, and spent his days playing golf and pretending the first 40 years of his life hadn't happened. I hadn't visited him in months. I called him once a week. Let him talk to Aurora. Kept the conversation light and shallow. It was easier that way. Safer. But today, I wasn't here for small talk. I knocked on his door at 7 o'clock in the evening, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. He opened the door, his face lighting up when he saw me. Thea, I didn't know you were coming. Is Aurora with you? Margaret just baked cookies. She'd love to. Dad. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. We need to talk. His smile faltered. What's wrong? I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo of the letter. Do you recognize this? My father's face went white. Thea, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Where did you get that? Answer the question. I stepped closer, my hands shaking. Do you recognize the letter? He didn't answer. He just stood there, staring at the screen, his whole body trembling. It was you. I said. The words tasted like poison. You knew Vivian was going to kill Mom. You paid the mechanic. You helped her plan it. No. My father shook his head, his eyes wild. No. It wasn't like that. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. My voice cracked. Explain to me how you could let the mother of your child be murdered by the woman you were sleeping with." My father collapsed onto the couch, his face in his hands. When he spoke, his voice was muffled, broken. "I didn't know she was going to kill her," he said. "I swear to God. Thea, I didn't know. Vivian told me she just wanted to scare her. Make her think she was losing her mind. Make her want to leave me so we could be together without a messy divorce. But you paid the mechanic." "I paid him to cut the brake lines halfway. Just enough to cause a minor accident. A fender bender. Something that would shake Elena up. Make her realize she wasn't invincible. But the brakes failed completely." My father looked up, tears streaming down his face. "Vivian double-crossed me. She paid the mechanic to cut them all the way. I didn't know until after the crash. By then, it was too late. You could have gone to the police. And say what? That I paid someone to sabotage my wife's car. I would have gone to prison. Thea, I would have lost everything. You lost everything anyway." I was crying now, hot tears streaming down my cheeks. "You lost me. You lost Mom. You lost any chance at being a good man." "I know." My father's voice broke. "I know. And I've spent every day since trying to make up for it. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve to be in your life. But Thea, please, please believe me when I say that I never wanted your mother to die. But she did die." I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. "And you let her killer walk free for 20 years. I'll turn myself in." My father stood up, his face desperate. "I'll go to the police. I'll tell them everything. Just please, please don't hate me." I looked at him, this man who had raised me, who had held me when I scraped my knee, who had taught me to ride a bike and tie my shoes and believe in myself. And I felt nothing. "I don't hate you, Dad," I said, "but I don't love you anymore either. I don't feel anything at all." I turned and walked out the door. Behind me, I heard him start to sob. I drove home in a daze, the world blurring past my windows like a dream I couldn't wake up from. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was past midnight. The lights were on in the living room. Sebastian was waiting for me. He opened the door before I could knock. "Thea." He pulled me into his arms. "Are you okay?" I shook my head against his chest. "It was him," I said. "He knew. He didn't stop it." Sebastian held me tighter. "I'm so sorry." I pulled back, looking up at him. "Everyone I trust betrays me," I said. "My mother, my father, you, everyone." Sebastian's face crumpled. "Thea, I can't do this." I stepped out of his embrace. "I can't marry you. I can't trust you. I can't trust anyone. Thea, please." Sebastian reached for me, but I stepped back. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've given you every reason not to trust me. But I'm not your father. I'm not your mother. I'm just a man who loves you and wants to spend the rest of his life proving it. Love isn't enough." My voice was cold, even to my own ears. It's never been enough. I walked past him, up the stairs, into Aurora's room. She was sleeping peacefully, her thumb in her mouth, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. I sat down on the edge of her bed and watched her breathe. She was the only good thing I'd ever made. The only person in the world who had never hurt me, never lied to me, never made me feel like I wasn't enough. I didn't deserve her, but I was going to protect her, no matter what it cost. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, staring at the wall of evidence I'd assembled. Photos, letters, bank records, everything I had on Vivian, on my father, on the conspiracy that had killed my mother. But the more I looked, the more I realized something didn't add up. The timeline was wrong. The financial transactions didn't align. And the letter my father had written, the one that seemed so damning, had a detail that bothered me. The stationery. My father had stopped using that stationery in 2015, 2 years before the letter was supposedly written. He'd switched to a different brand, one with a watermark. I remembered because I'd helped him order it. So why was this letter written on stationery he hadn't used in years? I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd hoped never to call again. Agent Diana Reyes answered on the second ring. Blackwood. It's 3 in the morning. I know. I sat back in my chair. I need you to look at something for me. Agent Reyes arrived at my house an hour later. Her hair messy and her eyes tired but sharp. This better be good, she said, following me to the office. Trust me. I pulled up the letter on my screen. This is a letter my father supposedly wrote to Vivian, detailing his involvement in my mother's death. But the stationery is wrong. And the more I look at it, the more I think the whole thing is a setup. Agent Reyes studied the document, her expression unreadable. What makes you think it's fake? She asked. The stationery. For one, my father stopped using this brand in 2015, but the letter is dated 2017. I pulled up a second document. Also, the handwriting. Look at the capital H in Harold. It's slightly different from his known samples. Agent Reyes leaned closer. You've got good eyes. I've got a lot of practice. I pulled up a third document. And then there's this. The envelope the USB drive came in had no postmark, no return address, no fingerprints. Someone wanted me to find this letter. Someone wanted me to believe my father was involved. Who? That's the question, isn't it? I turned to face her. Who would benefit from me turning against my father? Who would want me isolated, paranoid, questioning everyone I love? Agent Reyes was quiet for a moment. You think Vivian sent it? She said. I think Vivian is in prison. She doesn't have access to this kind of forensic detail. I shook my head. Whoever sent this has resources, technical skills, a grudge against my family. Any ideas? I thought about it. Thought about everyone who had ever wanted to hurt me. And then I remembered the letter Vivian had sent me from prison. The one that said, "Wait until you find out what your mother was hiding." My mother. I said slowly. What if my mother wasn't who I thought she was? Agent Reyes raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I stood up, pacing the room. My mother was a genius, a tech prodigy. She built a $300 million company from nothing. And then she died in a car accident that was ruled unavoidable. Your stepmother has already confessed to arranging that accident. Has she? I turned to face Agent Reyes. Or did she confess to something she didn't do? To protect someone else. Agent Reyes's eyes narrowed. Who would Vivian be protecting? I didn't have an answer, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. The letter from Vivian arrived the next day. I'd requested it through official channels, using Agent Reyes's connections. It was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in Vivian's loopy script. And it contained exactly 2 sentences. You think you know betrayal. Wait until you find out what your mother was hiding. Come visit me. I'll tell you everything. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I called Sebastian. I need you to come with me, I said. To the prison. To see Vivian. Sebastian's voice was cautious. Are you sure that's a good idea? No, I said. But I don't have a choice. The prison was in Dublin, California. A gray concrete fortress surrounded by barbed wire and despair. Sebastian and I sat in a visiting room, waiting behind a scratched plexiglass partition. The room smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Vivian was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hair gray and thinning, her face lined with age and bitterness. But her eyes were the same. Sharp, calculating, hungry. Thea. She sat down across from me, picking up the phone on her side of the partition. I was wondering when you'd come. Cut the crap. Vivian. I picked up my own phone. What do you know about my mother? Vivian smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Everything, she said. I know everything about Elena Blackwood. The real Elena Blackwood. Not the saint you've been mourning all these years. Then tell me, your mother isn't dead. Thea. Vivian leaned closer to the glass. She never was. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. I said. I saw her body. I went to her funeral. You saw a body. But was it hers? Vivian's eyes glittered. Your mother was a genius. Thea. A master manipulator. She planned her own death years in advance. The car accident. The funeral. The grief. It was all a performance. A way to disappear without anyone questioning it. Why? My voice was barely a whisper. Why would she do that? Because she wanted to build something. Something bigger than Blackwood Industries. Something that would change the world. Vivian sat back in her chair. She called it Nexus. An AI company that would make everything else look like children's toys. Nexus. The name hit me like a thunderbolt. Nexus Corp. I said. Your mother's company. Vivian nodded. Catherine Thorne was a figurehead. A front. The real power behind Nexus has always been Elena. Your mother. I felt the world tilt beneath me. That's not possible. I said. I destroyed Nexus. I shut down their servers. I sent their leadership to prison. You shut down one facility. One server. One branch of the company. Vivian's smile widened. Nexus has dozens of facilities. Thea. Hundreds. All over the world. And your mother is running them all. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of being her pawn. Vivian's voice hardened. I've spent 20 years doing her bidding. Marrying your father. Sabotaging your life. Taking the fall for her crimes. And for what? For a promise she never intended to keep. What promise? She promised me a share of Nexus. A seat at the table. A chance to be something more than a trophy wife. Vivian's eyes were bright with unshed tears. But the moment I got arrested, she cut me off. Left me to rot in here while she built her empire. So now you want revenge. I want justice. Vivian leaned forward, her voice intense. I want Elena to pay for what she's done. To you. To me. To everyone she's used and discarded. I looked at her. This woman who had made my life a living hell. And I saw something I hadn't expected. Pain. Real pain. I'll need proof. I said. Evidence I can take to the FBI. Vivian nodded. There's a safety deposit box. In Zurich. The key is in my cell. Under the mattress. Everything you need is in there. Why should I trust you? Because you have no choice. Vivian's smile was sad. And because, for once in my life, I'm telling the truth. The key was where Vivian said it would be. Agent Reyes retrieved it, along with a stack of documents that detailed everything. Elena's plan to fake her death. Her creation of Nexus. Her manipulation of Vivian and Harold and Catherine Thorne. It was all there. In black and white. With bank records and emails and photographs to back it up. But the most damning piece of evidence was a video file. It showed Elena Blackwood, my mother, sitting in a boardroom, surrounded by executives, discussing the launch of Nexus's new AI platform. She looked older than I remembered. Her dark hair streaked with gray. Her face lined with years of stress and secrets. But her eyes were the same. Sharp. Intelligent. Unforgiving. Thea. The video was dated 3 weeks ago. If you're watching this, it means Vivian has betrayed me. I'm not surprised. She was always too weak for the long game. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I know you have questions. Elena continued. I know you're angry, confused, hurt, but I need you to understand that everything I did, the accident, the disappearance, the years of silence, I did to protect you. Protect me. I whispered. Your father was a weak man. Thea. He would have destroyed you. dragged you down with his incompetence and his greed. I had to get you away from him. I had to give you a chance to become the woman I knew you could be. You left me, I said, even though she couldn't hear me. You left me with him. I left you with Vivian. She was supposed to guide you, mold you, prepare you for the life I was building. Elena's expression hardened, but she got greedy. She tried to claim you for herself. And now she's in prison, where she belongs. What about me? My voice cracked. What was I supposed to be? Elena smiled. It was the smile I remembered from my childhood. Warm, loving, full of promise. You were supposed to be my heir. Thea, my successor. The one who would take Nexus to heights I could only dream of. She leaned closer to the camera. And you still can. All you have to do is come to me. Leave the past behind. Join me in building the future. I can't. I said. I won't. Think about it. Elena's image flickered. I'll be in touch. The video ended. I sat in my office, staring at the blank screen. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Fear. Not the fear of death, or betrayal, or loss, but the fear of a daughter who had just realized her mother was a monster. Sebastian found me an hour later, still sitting in the dark. Thea. He knelt beside my chair. What happened? My mother is alive. The words came out flat. Empty. She's been alive this whole time. She's the one behind Nexus. And she wants me to join her. Sebastian's face went pale. Thea. That's insane. Impossible. I know. I turned to look at him. But it's also true. I have the proof. Sebastian was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? He asked. I don't know. I shook my head. Part of me wants to find her. Confront her. Make her pay for everything she's done. And the other part wants to run. To hide. To pretend I never found out. But I couldn't say that. Because running was what Elena had done. And I refused to be anything like her. I'm going to stop her. I said. Whatever it takes. I'm going to stop her. Sebastian took my hand. Then I'm with you, he said. Every step of the way. I looked at him. At the man who had betrayed me and saved me. Who had broken my heart and put it back together. Thank you, I said. And for the first time in days. I meant it. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Sebastian and I worked with Agent Reyes and a team of FBI specialists to plan our approach. Elena was too smart, too careful, too paranoid to be caught by conventional means. We needed something unconventional, something she wouldn't expect. We needed to use her own tactics against her. The key is to make her think she's winning. Agent Reyes explained, pointing at a map of Elena's known locations. We let her believe that Thea is considering her offer. We let her think she's drawing us into a trap. And then we spring our own. And what's our trap? Sebastian asked. You. Agent Reyes pointed at him. Elena doesn't know about your history with Nexus. She doesn't know that you've been working with us. As far as she's concerned, you're just Thea's boyfriend. A liability. Not an asset. She knows everything. Sebastian said. Trust me. My mother told her everything. Your mother told her about the past. Agent Reyes corrected. She didn't tell her about the present. Elena has no idea that you've been feeding us information about Nexus for the past 2 years. I turned to Sebastian. You've been working with the FBI. Sebastian nodded. After my mother was arrested, I made a deal. I'd give them everything I knew about Nexus in exchange for immunity. They've been using me as an asset ever since. Why didn't you tell me? Because I couldn't. Sebastian's expression was pained. The FBI made me sign a non-disclosure agreement. If I told anyone, even you, they'd revoke my immunity and throw me in prison. I stared at him, processing this new information. So every time you were late coming home, I said slowly, Every time you said you were working late or meeting with a client, I was meeting with Agent Reyes. Sebastian nodded, giving her intel, helping her build a case against Elena. You lied to me. I protected you. Sebastian stepped closer. Thea, Elena is dangerous. More dangerous than anyone you've ever faced. If she knew I was working with the FBI, she would have killed me. And she would have killed you. Too. Just to make a point. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to yell. To scream. To throw things at his head. But I couldn't. Because I understood. I had kept secrets too. I had lied to protect the people I loved. I had done terrible things in the name of survival. Next time, I said, tell me. Even if it's dangerous. Even if it puts us both at risk. No more secrets. Sebastian. I mean it. No more secrets. He agreed. I promise. The meeting with Elena was set for a Thursday. At a neutral location in Switzerland. She'd chosen an old chateau in the Alps. A place that had been in her family for generations. It was remote. Secure. And utterly defensible. Exactly the kind of place a woman on the run would choose for a clandestine rendezvous. I flew in on a private jet, accompanied by Sebastian and a team of FBI agents disguised as my security detail. Agent Reyes was already on the ground, coordinating the operation from a command post in Geneva. Remember, she said over the encrypted comms, your job is to keep her talking. The longer she talks, the more evidence we gather. Don't confront her. Don't accuse her. Just let her talk. What if she tries to hurt me? I asked. Then you run. Agent Reyes's voice was grim. You run. And you let us handle the rest. I looked at Sebastian. He was pale but determined. His jaw set. His eyes focused. You ready? I asked. No, he said. But I'm going anyway. The chateau was beautiful. Stone walls. Ivy creeping up the sides. A garden full of flowers that shouldn't have been blooming in the Swiss autumn. It looked like something out of a fairy tale. The kind of place where princesses were rescued and villains were defeated. But I wasn't a princess. And Elena wasn't a fairy tale villain. She was something worse. She was my mother. I walked through the front door. Sebastian close behind me. And found her waiting in the grand foyer. She was dressed in black. A simple pantsuit that made her look elegant and dangerous. And her smile was the same smile I remembered from my childhood. Thea. She opened her arms. My darling girl. I've missed you so much. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there. Looking at her. Elena's smile faltered. Not going to hug your mother? She asked. My mother died 20 years ago. I said. I don't know who you are. Elena's expression hardened. I know you're angry. I know you're hurt. But I'm still your mother. Thea. Nothing can change that. You're a stranger. I stepped closer. My heart pounding. A stranger who abandoned me. Who left me with a father who didn't want me and a stepmother who wanted me dead. I left you to protect you. You left me to build your empire. My voice cracked. Don't pretend this was about me. It was never about me. It was always about you. Elena was quiet for a long moment. You're right, she said finally. It was about me. But it was also about you. About the future I wanted to give you. I didn't ask for your future. I stepped even closer. Close enough to see the lines around her eyes. The gray in her hair. I asked for a mother. And you weren't there. Thea. I built Phoenix without you. My voice was steady now. Strong. I survived Sebastian's betrayal without you. I gave birth to my daughter without you. I don't need you. Elena. I never did. Elena's face twisted. You think you're so strong, she said. You think you've accomplished so much. But everything you have, everything you are, is because of me. The money, the intelligence, the drive. It all came from me. No. I shook my head. It came from my own hard work, my own sacrifice, my own determination to be better than the people who raised me. Elena's eyes glittered with something that might have been pride, or might have been rage. "You really are my daughter," she said. "Stubborn, ambitious, unwilling to bend. I'm not your daughter," I said. "I'm Thea Blackwood, and I'm here to stop you." Elena laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound. "Stop me," she said. "Thea, darling, you can't stop me. I've been planning this for 20 years. I have resources you can't imagine, allies you've never heard of. And you." She gestured at me. "At Sebastian. At the agents hidden outside. You're just a child playing a game she doesn't understand. Then explain it to me." I crossed my arms. "Explain why you did it. Why you faked your death. Why you built Nexus. Why you tried to destroy everything I've worked for." Elena studied me for a long moment. "Because I wanted to live forever," she said finally. "And I needed you to help me do it." The explanation took an hour. Elena had been working on a project for decades. A way to upload human consciousness into an AI, achieving digital immortality. She'd tested it on animals, on willing subjects, on people no one would miss. And now, she was ready to test it on herself. But the process required a genetic match, a blood relative who could serve as a biological bridge between her physical body and the digital consciousness. That relative was me. "I don't want to upload your consciousness into anything," I said. "I want you to go to prison for the rest of your life." "That's not going to happen." Elena smiled. "Because if I go to prison, the technology I've created falls into the wrong hands. Governments, corporations, terrorists. They'll use it to create weapons beyond anything you can imagine." "So you're blackmailing me?" "I'm giving you a choice." Elena stepped closer. "Help me achieve immortality, and I'll destroy Nexus. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. Or refuse. And I'll release my technology to the highest bidder. Millions will die, and it will be your fault." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "You're insane," I said. "I'm practical." Elena's smile widened. "Now, what's it going to be? Thea, are you going to help your mother live forever? Or are you going to let the world burn?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked at Sebastian. He was standing by the door, his hand in his pocket, his expression unreadable. "Sebastian," I said. "Now." He pulled out a device and pressed a button. The lights went out. Alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the sound of breaking glass. "What did you do?" Elena screamed. "Your security system is down," I said. "The FBI is inside the building. And in about 30 seconds, they're going to be in this room." Elena's face contorted with rage. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "You think you've won?" "No," I said. "But I think I've finally stopped running." The doors burst open. FBI agents flooded the room, guns drawn, shouting orders. Elena looked at me, her eyes burning with hatred. "This isn't over." "Thea," she said, "I'll be back. And when I am, you'll regret this." She turned and ran toward the back of the chateau. "Stop her," I shouted, but it was too late. Elena disappeared through a hidden door, and by the time the agents reached it, she was gone. We searched the chateau for hours. We found documents, servers, evidence of crimes that would take years to unravel. But we didn't find Elena. She had vanished. Like smoke. Like a ghost. Just like she had 20 years ago. "Thea." Sebastian found me in the garden, sitting on a stone bench, staring at the mountains. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For letting her escape." He sat down beside me. "I should have been faster." "You were fast enough." I leaned my head against his shoulder. "We have what we need. The evidence. The servers. The documents. We can destroy Nexus now. But we didn't catch her. No. I closed my eyes. But we will. Someday. When? I didn't have an answer. So I just sat there, in the garden of my mother's chateau, and let myself feel the weight of everything that had happened. Sebastian put his arm around me. I made you a promise, he said, a blood oath, that we would do this together. I remember. I meant it. He turned to look at me. Whatever it takes. Wherever she goes. I'm with you. I looked at him. At this man who had betrayed me and saved me. Who had broken my heart and put it back together. I know. I said. That's why I love you. 6 months passed. The FBI dismantled Nexus piece by piece. Using the evidence we'd gathered in Switzerland. Dozens of Elena's associates were arrested. Hundreds of servers were seized. The AI technology she'd spent decades developing was destroyed or secured in government facilities. But Elena herself remained at large. We searched for her everywhere. Europe, Asia, South America, every continent, every country, every city where she might have hidden. But she was a ghost. And ghosts don't leave tracks. I threw myself into my work. Phoenix had survived the Nexus crisis, emerging stronger than ever. Chloe was running the day-to-day operations, freeing me to focus on the search for Elena. Sebastian worked alongside me, leading a team of analysts who combed through data, looking for patterns, looking for clues, looking for anything that might lead us to her. And Aurora grew. 5 years old, then 6, then 7. She started school, made friends, learned to read and write and do math. She looked more like Sebastian every day, with his sandy hair and his whiskey-colored eyes. But she had my stubbornness, my drive, my unwillingness to give up. She was the best of both of us, and I was determined to make sure she never had to face Elena. The call came on a Tuesday. I was in my office, reviewing financial reports, when my phone rang. The number was blocked. Thea Blackwood. I answered. Thea. Elena's voice. It's been a while. My heart stopped. Where are you? Somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll never find me. Elena's voice was calm, almost friendly. I'm calling to make you an offer. I don't want your offers. Listen to me. Thea. I'm dying. I froze. What? The consciousness transfer technology one was developing. I tested it on myself. And it's killing me. Elena's voice wavered. I have 6 months. Maybe less. And I need your help. You need my help. I laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. You've spent years trying to destroy me. And now you want my help. I want to see you. Elena's voice was soft now, almost gentle. I want to see my daughter. My granddaughter. I want to say goodbye. Why should I believe you? Because I'm telling the truth. Elena paused. And because you're the only family I have left. I sat in my office, staring at the phone. And I thought about everything. The betrayal. The lies. The years of silence. And I made a choice. Where are you? I asked. Elena was in Maine. Of all places. A small cottage on the coast. Far from any city. Far from any prying eyes. It was humble. Simple. Nothing like the chateau in Switzerland or the mansions she'd owned in her previous life. Sebastian drove me there. His hand on my knee the whole way. Are you sure about this? He asked. For the 10th time. No, I said. But I need to see her. I need to understand. And if she tries to hurt you, then you shoot her. I looked at him. You brought the gun. Right. Sebastian patted his jacket. I brought 2. Elena opened the door before I could knock. She looked terrible. Her hair was thin and gray, falling out in patches. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched tight over bones that seemed too sharp. Her eyes were the same. Sharp, intelligent, unforgiving. But there was something else in them now. Fear. Thea. She reached for me. But I stepped back. Don't. I said. I'm not here to hug you. I'm here to talk. Elena lowered her hand. Fair enough. She led us inside. The cottage was small but cozy, filled with books and photographs and the detritus of a life lived in hiding. On the mantelpiece, I saw a photo of me as a child, maybe 8 years old, grinning at the camera with a gap-toothed smile. You kept that, I said. I kept everything. Elena sat down on the couch, her movements slow and careful. Every photo, every report card, every drawing you ever made. I've been watching you, Thea, from a distance. Always. Then why didn't you come back? I sat down across from her. Sebastian beside me. Why didn't you tell me you were alive? Because I was afraid. Elena's voice cracked. Afraid of what you'd think of me. Afraid of what I'd become. Afraid that if I saw you, I wouldn't be able to leave again. You left anyway. I know. Elena's eyes filled with tears. And I've regretted it every day since. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she was sorry. That she loved me. That all of this had been some terrible mistake. But I knew better. Why did you do it? I asked. Why did you fake your death? Why did you build Nexus? Why did you try to destroy everything I've worked for? Elena was quiet for a long moment. Because I was scared. She said finally. Scared of getting old. Scared of dying. Scared of being forgotten. She looked at me, her eyes bright with tears. I wanted to live forever. Thea. I wanted to be remembered. And I thought Nexus was the way to do it. But it wasn't. No. Elena shook her head. It was just another prison. Another cage. Another way of running from the things I was afraid of. Like me. Like you. Elena smiled. A sad, broken smile. You were always braver than me. Thea. Always stronger. Always better. I couldn't face that. So I ran. Now you're dying. Now I'm dying. Elena nodded. And I wanted to see you one last time. Before I go. I looked at her. This woman who had given me life and then abandoned me. And I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. I don't forgive you. I said. I don't think I ever will. But I don't hate you either. I just feel sorry for you. Elena's face crumpled. That's fair. She whispered. That's more than I deserve. We stayed for 3 hours. Elena talked about her life. The good parts and the bad. The choices she regretted and the ones she didn't. She talked about my mother's mother. A woman I'd never met. Who had died in a mental institution after years of delusions and paranoia. She talked about the fear that had driven her. The fear that she would end up the same way. Crazy. Alone. Forgotten. I didn't want that for you. She said. I wanted you to be strong. To be independent. To never need anyone the way I needed people. That's not strength. I said. That's isolation. I know that now. Elena looked at Sebastian. You're lucky. You found someone who loves you. Someone who stays. Sebastian squeezed my hand. I know. I said. Before we left. Elena gave me a box. It's everything I have left. She said. Bank accounts. Property deeds. Passwords. Take it. Use it. Burn it. I don't care. What am I supposed to do with this? Whatever you want. Elena smiled. You've earned that. I took the box. Goodbye, Elena. I said. Goodbye, Thea. Elena's voice was soft. I love you. I always have. I didn't say it back. I couldn't. But as I walked out the door, I looked back. Just once. She was sitting on the couch. Her hands in her lap. Her eyes closed. She looked peaceful. Almost happy. like she'd finally found what she'd been looking for. Elena died 3 months later. I wasn't there. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't visit the grave. But I kept the box. And sometimes, late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I would open it and look at the photos, the drawings, the memories of a woman I had loved and lost and found again, only to lose once more. Sebastian would find me in the office, tears on my cheeks, and he would hold me without asking questions. "She was proud of you," he said one night. I could see it in her eyes. "I know," I said. "That's what makes it so hard." The wedding was small, just family and close friends, in the garden of our home in Boston. Aurora was the flower girl, scattering petals with more enthusiasm than grace. Chloe was the maid of honor, crying before I even reached the altar. Elena, my mentor, not my mother, officiated, her voice steady and warm. Sebastian stood at the altar, waiting for me. He was wearing a gray suit, the same color he'd worn on the night of the scholarship assembly, all those years ago. But he was different now. Softer, kinder, more real. "You look beautiful," he said as I reached him. "You look nervous." I said, "I am." He smiled. "I'm always nervous around you." We said our vows. Simple words. Honest words. Words that meant more than any grand gesture or romantic speech. "I promise to be honest with you," Sebastian said. "Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Even when I'd rather hide. I promise to trust you." I said, "Even when I'm scared. Even when I've been hurt before. Even when trusting feels impossible." We kissed. And the crowd cheered. And Aurora ran up to wrap her arms around our legs. "Mommy, Daddy," she shouted. "You did it, we did it." I agreed, picking her up. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. 1 year later, I stood in front of a classroom at Harvard, teaching a course on ethics in artificial intelligence. The students were young, bright, full of ideas and idealism. They reminded me of myself. Once upon a time, before the betrayal, before the revenge, before I learned that the world was more complicated than I'd ever imagined. Today, I said, we're going to talk about the choices we make. The ones that define us. The ones that haunt us. The ones that make us who we are. I looked out at the sea of faces, and I thought about my mother, about Sebastian, about Vivian and my father and everyone else who had crossed my path. The most important thing I've learned, I said, is that the past doesn't define you. What you build from the ashes. That's who you really are. The students nodded, took notes, asked questions, and I answered them. Honestly, openly, without fear, because I wasn't afraid anymore. I was free. The last scene takes place on a Sunday afternoon, 3 years after Elena's death. Aurora is 10 years old, tall for her age, with Sebastian's smile and my stubborn chin. She's sitting on the floor of the living room, building something with blocks. A castle, she says, where everyone lives happily ever after. Sebastian is in the kitchen, making dinner. He's learned to cook over the years, and he's actually gotten good at it. Tonight, he's making lasagna, Aurora's favorite. I'm sitting on the couch, reading a book. Not a work thing, not a Phoenix thing, just a book. For pleasure. Because I finally have time for pleasure. Thea. Sebastian's voice drifts in from the kitchen. Can you grab the mail? I set down my book and walk to the front door. The mail is the usual mix of bills and junk and catalogs. But at the bottom of the pile, there's an envelope. Plain white. No return address. No postmark. My heart starts to pound. I open it with shaking hands. Inside is a single photograph. It shows a woman, standing in front of a building I don't recognize. She's wearing sunglasses, so I can't see her eyes. but I can see her smile. Elena's smile. I turn the photograph over. On the back, in handwriting I know too well, are 4 words. I'm still watching. Thea. I stare at the photograph, at the words, at the impossible truth they represent. Elena is alive. She faked her death again. She's been out there, somewhere, watching, waiting. But for what? Thea. Sebastian calls from the kitchen. Everything okay? I slip the photograph into my pocket. Everything's fine. I say. Just junk mail. I walk back into the living room, sit down on the couch, and pick up my book. Aurora looks up at me. Mommy, are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. I smile, and it almost reaches my eyes. Everything's fine. But as I turn the page, I can feel the photograph burning in my pocket. Elena is still out there. And someday, I'll have to find her. But not today. Today, I'm going to eat lasagna with my family, and read my book, and pretend that the past is finally behind me, because some ghosts don't haunt you. They just wait.